moon landing was a hoax.
Technically, the moon itself is a hoax.
Right, but betting with Sportsbet's new iPhone app?
I could do this standing on my head.
Thanks, Gravity. Sportsbet's new iPhone app. It's foolproof.
The FTFE show. Welcome to the FTFE show.
Time to dance. Everybody dance.
Welcome to the FTFE show. Earth thinks that evolution is real. Chemtrails don't exist, vaccines work. Climate change is happening, we landed on the moon. The FTFE show. Welcome to the FTFE show. Welcome to the FTFE show. Study is not alright. Baby, it's not alright.
We're living on a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
Hello everybody, I'm FTFE and this is the FTFE show. Thank you very much for joining me. So I know you watch me because you enjoy laughing at the stupidity of flat earthers, but did you know that there is also people that are just as dumb as flat earthers? And today we're going to bring on one of my favourite content creators who, if you click on his name in the title, you can subscribe to his channel, Dapper Dinosaur, to take us through the stupidity of creationists. Hello Dapper, welcome to the channel. I am ecstatic to have you here.
Hey Craig, how's it going?
I'm absolutely fantastic. If you guys don't know,
It feels
Dapper
weird
is
to call you
also
Craig,
my
not
GM.
Commander Shelby.
Yes, Dapper is also my GM when we play our Star Trek role-playing game on a Friday over on Top Hats Off channel. I am Commander Shelby after my promotion, and Dapper likes to try and get us all killed, isn't that right?
Yeah, especially if you're being stupid, like deciding to shoot at the murder bots surrounding you.
Or, you know, taking people hostage when I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
Or blowing up a couple of solar systems. I'm sure that's going to
Only one on my watch, though.
Yeah. One just happened off screen. It was fine. So on your main channel, on Dapper Dino, you mainly cover creationist stupidity, right?
Yeah, it is. I do. I have a couple debates I do with flat earthers on there, but it's mostly young Earth creationism. There's a few other stuff. There's some mud flood stuff up there. There's some like ancient alien history nonsense on there. There's some ancient high technology stuff on there, but it's mostly young Earth creationists.
Nikki Louder in the chat says, "What does his shirt say? I can't read Klingon."
Oh, it's I don't know, but if you can figure it out, let me know.
Anyone, the first person to actually tell us in the chat what it means gets a cookie.
There you go.
And I'm not like Mr. Beast. I will actually give you a cookie.
Maybe it'll be a Gloria, the fake Klingon cookies from my channel trailers for some of my videos.
Tay seems shocked that you're an actual human and not a dinosaur.
I'm not. This is a costume.
Yeah, he's a dino wearing a human costume. I mean, it's clear.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the lifeless face and everything. It's just a mask.
Yeah, this is clearly fake.
It's so you know, obviously he needs to go out in public every now and then. And I've heard that getting on the human costume is a whole ordeal. So, you know, he doesn't do it once it's on, he leaves it on for a while just so he doesn't have to keep taking it on and off. Yeah. So
I actually got this technology from Raxacoricofallapatorius, and if you remember how much trouble it was for them, that's about how much trouble it is for me, right?
Yeah. So, right, creationists. The big question is, are they dumber than flat earthers?
I'm going to go ahead and say no, they're not on average dumber, but it is a close call because many of the things that they say are a little bit harder to test. So for instance, like if I was to say, hey, what's a test you could do to see if the earth is flat? Literally me calling you and noticing that it's dark outside and it's light here and also that the sun sets. That's it. That's all I need to do. The earth isn't flat. Okay. On the other hand, to figure out, like, okay, well, how do we know the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and evolution is real? I can't just go outside or call one person and see for myself if those things are true. So, to be fair to young Earth creationists, it is harder to test those things, and it is more important that you rely on things like actual research and numbers and genetic sequencing and all this stuff. However, many of the things that they say use the exact same fallacious reasoning that flat earthers use, right? They'll use the same fallacies. They'll use the same just distrust of anyone with or letters after their name, like PhD. The same, like, well, you just believe the government. Like,
been indoctrinated.
No. Right. So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, okay, to be fair, it's harder to find out for yourself that, the Earth is ancient and evolution is real. But it's not that much harder. And also, yeah, they are just as bad at thinking.
I mean, like, for me, the one thing I need to know about the age of the Earth is that lead exists. Right?
Yeah, there would be far less lead if the Earth weren't so old. Because the stable end of most isotope, or many isotope decay chains, and somewhere in lead, whether it be 207 or 208.
Yeah, so, something breaks down to something else until it gets to lead, which doesn't have the extra energy to break down to become really something else unless you wait, like, until the end of time. So the fact that there is, quite an abundance of lead on Earth shows that what we're on has to be very, 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 very old. So, like, so how
and it's not just...
Sorry, go on.
It's not just the lead. We can actually see the entire decay chain, right? Yeah. So if you say, okay, there should be this much uranium of this isotope, then this much thorium, and this much molybdenum, or whatever else is in the decay chain. I don't remember the whole decay chain for, like, U-235. I used to, because I used to be tested on it in the Navy, but I don't remember it anymore. But yeah, you can, like, go through that whole list and say, like, are the ratios correct? And there's actually one place where the ratios aren't correct if the uranium was just decaying normally. But they are correct if it had been an induced fission reactor, a natural one. And that's in Oklo, which is in Africa. And so basically people were mining for uranium, and they were like, hey, the isotope ratio is off here. And one of the hypotheses was like, well, maybe like 3 billion years ago, it was a natural reactor that was inducing fission. And so based on our knowledge of things like the atomic decay law and things like that, radioactive decay, half-lives and all this, people calculated, okay, well, what would we expect to see in all the decay products and all the fission products and their decay products if this was a natural reactor? And we found exactly that when we looked at Oklo, which demonstrates, contra to what creationists say, that maybe these decay rates have changed over time. Well, if they were, then we wouldn't have found those exact predicted decay products and their decay products in Oklo. Yet we did.
So they think the actual rate of decay has changed?
Yep.
What?
So they don't all think this, but a large portion of them do. There was a study this project called the RATE Project, which stood for Radioisotopes in the Age of the Earth. And a number of young Earth creationists did it, mostly geologists from some of the big organizations like Institute for Creation Research, Answers in Genesis, and whatnot. And so they formed this team, and they're going to try to investigate how they could find a way basically around the fact that radiometric dating consistently gives ages that are far older than they think the entire universe is. And they basically failed. What they came up with was all the radiation that has evidently happened on Earth, in the rocks, in the geology of the Earth, would be accountable in about 4.5 billion years worth of history. But we can't accept that. So we're going to hypothesize exotic physics, by which they just mean magic, that accelerated the decay rate. And one of the things that's really fun is some of them, the smarter ones, have said, well, how will we accomplish this? Well, maybe the strength of the strong nuclear force was weakened in the past, which would get you faster decay rates on all currently radioactive isotopes.
Yeah, but would also change the entire physics of the universe.
Yes, it would. And also, it would create new decay chains that we don't see, because some currently stable atoms, or nuclei technically, would no longer be stable because of the weaker force, which means that not only would it change all of physics, but we would also be able to detect the products of decay chains that no longer occur because of the weakening of the strong nuclear force, which we don't do. So not only is that just invoking magic for no reason, well, because you want to be right, but also we can check to see if that happened, and it didn't. We've already figured that one out. Sorry, guys.
It's a big parallel here with Bob Nadell, rest in peace, buying his gyroscope to disprove that the Earth rotates, turning it on, finding the Earth rotates. Ah, right, it must be magic energy from the heavens.
Did they encase it in like a bismuth tube or something
Yeah.
to see if they could block the heavenly energies? Ugh.
It didn't work.
It didn't
So, yeah,
work.
they have
And I
to
love that their next
invent
one was like,
random
well, yeah,
stuff.
but it's going in 3 axes. Shouldn't it be just one? And then everyone's like, only if you're at the pole or the equator.
Oh, bless them. Bless their little hearts.
Yeah, so basically that is another commonality. So you notice it in our Flat Earth, right? Everything they come up with as an explanation for some phenomenon ends up contradicting some other explanation they have for a different phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? That happens in young Earth creationism too.
Yeah.
They'll come up with like, well, maybe this happened, right? And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work with your other explanations. So they'll say things like, oh, I know. The reason that the fossils come in this order that looks like evolution is actually because you're looking at the ordering of low elevation to high elevation, right? That's why it goes from sea to land. You're like, okay, but that would then require that you're actually depositing these things in that sequence. But the reason that you say that we have things like, marine deposits, land deposits, marine deposits, land deposits, is because the flood was going back and forth in tsunamis and grabbing things from different elevations and mixing them. Which, okay, that doesn't work together. You can't have both. You have to pick.
Yeah.
Either the flood was gentle enough to segregate things by elevation, which still doesn't work, or it was so violent that you could mix everything up. But you can't do both. So, yeah, because of course they all also believe in Noah's flood as a literal event that actually flooded the entire world with water.
Yeah, which just makes perfect sense, because all that water just, came from somewhere, I guess, somehow.
Yeah, that's another problem they don't really have a great solution to, is that there just isn't enough water to do that. Some of the things they'll claim is that the globe was just lower relief before the flood, so that the oceans weren't as deep and the mountains weren't as high, which lowers the amount of water that you would need to flood the Earth in that case.
What?
Their evidence for this is that it would allow the flood to happen. That's it. That's their evidence for that. Is that it would allow the flood to happen.
Well, this
Now,
must be true, so the flood could happen.
Yeah. Look, if the Bible says it, it has to be true. So no matter what else we do, as long as it agrees with, and the thing is, not just the Bible, but their specific interpretation of the Bible. Because remember, their interpretation of the Bible is not like the majority Christian, or in the case of Genesis, like Jewish interpretation of these texts. They themselves have a somewhat fringe interpretation of these things.
Yeah.
Which is why most churches and most Jewish organizations aren't young Earth creationists and don't have any problem with like the age of the Earth or evolution or whatever else they want to complain about. Like most Christian and Jewish organizations are like, yeah, no, you can believe in evolution in the old Earth. It's fine. Science is okay.
Dihydrogen
there
monoxide,
is
£5
fringe.
says, so the results of the tests that the creationists performed matched the scientific consensus on the age of the Earth? I wonder why.
Curious, right?
It's so strange.
Yeah, and so, but also they'll just resort to flat out lying. One of my favorite examples of flat out lying is there's a guy from Australia named Andrew Snelling. I think he actually retired this year from being a creationist nonsense guy, which is actually a job you can get like a salary at, because there are well-funded creationist organizations, unlike the Flat Earth. You can actually be like a salaried flat Earth, or like young Earther with a like actual retirement plan and healthcare and whatnot.
Yeah.
So at least here in the US you can. But he was trying to claim that these folded sediments in the Grand Canyon were actually folded while they were unlithified. That means while they're still like soft sediment. Also, sorry for weird things. The sun is coming in through a window, and
I just assumed it was disturbances in the subspace behind you.
Oh yeah, okay, that's it. Yep, subspace disturbances.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's trying to claim this, and one of his reasons for saying that these were folded while the rock still was unlithified, so essentially just still sediment, not rock, is that he says that there were no large-scale or even micro-scale stress fractures in the rock, which you would expect if they were unlithified.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So in his paper that he publishes in his own journal that he himself is the editor of, which means it didn't go through any peer review because it's his journal that he publishes in.
Which I bet
He published this
cites.
photograph.
I bet he uses that paper as citations and arguments, right? He cites
Oh, he
himself,
does.
right? Yes, yeah, of course.
Oh, he does, yeah. So he puts this picture of this formation in, and you can see the nice folded rocks, and yeah, you can't see any cracks. But curiously, there are some people in the photograph, which is a weird thing to do if you're just photographing some geological feature, right? Like, why do you put people there? Maybe it's for scale. Okay. Well, the thing is, that same formation has been photographed by the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, which is like the official geology body of the United States of America. And wouldn't you know it, but when you look at their much higher resolution photos, exactly where he has people pose are where the damn cracks are. He posed people in the photo of the rocks he said weren't cracked so that they hid the cracks.
Almost like they have to bend the truth to make their nonsense make sense. Yeah, that sounds very similar to flat earthers again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's and that kind of thing is it just keeps happening, right? And there are some times when I can just chalk it up to maybe they're just being stupid, but many times they'll also do things like they know that sciencey types like to see peer-reviewed papers cited, which we do. That's fair. So they'll cite a paper, but one of their tricks is they like to only cite the first few lines of the abstract. And if you read a lot of scientific papers, what you know about the abstract is that usually the abstract is setting up whatever question is going to be answered or whatever problem is going to be solved in the paper. Or at least what the researchers are hoping will be answered or solved, right? So the paper will start off with something like, there's insufficient genetic data to resolve the relationship between these two organisms, sentence 1. And then the entire rest of the paper is, here's how we figured out how to get over this problem by getting additional genetic sequencing, using new techniques to resolve the relationship. And here's our conclusion with all of our statistics to indicate that, yes, we overcame the problem that we pointed out in sentence 1. And then the creationists will come along and then just cite sentence 1 where it says there's currently insufficient genetic data to resolve the relationship between these organisms. And they'll say that, see, even the scientists admit that this is a problem. It's like, either you just cited that paper after reading literally one sentence of it, which means you didn't read it, which means you shouldn't cite it. So you're being dishonest there, or you read that paper, you realize that it says the exact opposite of what you wanted to say, but you're cherry picking just the first sentence of the abstract in order to make it sound like there's an actual problem where there isn't one.
Yes, which is exactly what flat earthers do, like when I was debating Flatzoid, and he kept cherry-picking the part of planar surveying. He would literally bring up the result on Google and highlight the words where it says, planar surveying ignores the curvature of the Earth because it doesn't affect the accuracy until after, and he like, see, there we go. They can ignore the curvature of the Earth because it's flat. Obviously, if you go in and read that document, the entire document states that the Earth's curved and they can ignore it for 12.5 by 12.5 miles because it doesn't affect the accuracy of that. But then after that, they have to use the curvature of the Earth. And how can they ignore something that doesn't exist? It's just they take a sentence, think it backs them up, but just ignored everything else in it. Yeah,
it's like I don't have to ignore my pet elephant because I don't have a pet elephant. There's nothing to ignore. If I said I'm ignoring my pet elephant, the implication there is that I have a pet elephant to be ignored.
Yeah. I ignore the voices in my head, that's
exactly,
what we should all
they're
do.
There.
They're definitely there. No, not right now, I'm busy. Okay. So you can only ignore something that actually exists. So yeah, thanks for that, Flatzoid. NetTube user says the t-shirt has text in Klingon that reads Naduk Yupluche, which translates to where is the bathroom?
No, that would be oh, now I don't remember bathroom all of a sudden. My goodness. Poochpa, that's it. Because pooch is toilet. Nukrak och poochpa. Where is the bathroom?
No, that's probably what he wrote, but I didn't pronounce it right. But that's not what's on your t-shirt, is it?
No, this says, let me get the direction out here. Jeshov bet.
Jeshov bet.
Yep. It's very simple. It's almost as simple as a single Klingon word can get. It's got a prefix, a verb root, and one suffix. So,
anyone know what that means then? Todd Ferguson, Flerfs supervisor, says you should hear about the two younger creationists who offered Jack Horner $23,000 to carbon 14 date a T-Rex fossil to prove the Earth is less than 10,000 years old.
Yeah, so that's another thing that they like to do, is they like to inappropriately use modern dating methods. And then when the dating methods return an answer that isn't consistent with the scientific consensus, because they intentionally misused it, then they're like, oh, wonderful, look at it. And it's the same thing that flat earthers do too, right? And they're like, oh, look, I can see too far. I'm like, well, did you take into account refraction? Well, no. Did you take into account how high you are? Well, no. And they'll do the same thing with radiometric dating. So for instance, there's one person, Steve Austin, another geology guy.
Not the wrestler.
No, not the wrestler or the $6 Million Man. Different Steve Austin from both of those. So he took some lava, again from the Grand Canyon. They love the Grand Canyon. For one thing, young Earth creationism is a mostly American phenomenon. And for another thing, the Grand Canyon is one of the best places to do geology in America. So, I get it. I can see why they love the Grand Canyon. I do too, right? I live in the same state as the Grand Canyon. I've been there a few times. It's a great place. If you can get a chance to go to the Grand Canyon, I highly recommend it to anyone. Although,
I'd love to see where the giants dug the moon out of the Earth. That's lovely. Yeah,
they melted it down and put it in the sky to mock people for worshiping the sun for some reason.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah, that is obviously what happened. But there's a few lava flows in the Grand Canyon, and one of them actually occurred after the canyon had formed to some degree, although it wasn't as deep as it is now. And so it's an interesting lava flow because it can help date certain layers of the Grand Canyon, right? Because anything lower than it is going to be older, anything higher than it is going to be younger, because lava doesn't just kind of flow in the middle of rocks, right? Because it's extrusive, which means it formed on the surface of the Earth. Okay, cool. So he takes a few different samples of this lava, and he sends it to a lab in Massachusetts that no longer does this kind of testing. But when he sent it to them, on the paperwork that he had to fill out to have it tested, there was a warning that said that they could not test rocks with an estimated age that was below about 2 million, if I remember correctly. And these were rocks that were formed on the order of hundreds of thousands of years ago. So no one thinks that these rocks could be tested by that lab. And so what that means then is any date that they return that's under that 2 million threshold is just them reading 0 plus whatever noise is in the system.
Yeah.
Because all of their dates are just, okay. So out of his, I think, 5 samples, and the exact number of samples I would have to double check on, but I think it's about 5 samples. One of them was above the 2 million, which means that of his dates, only one of them was actually anything but 0, which is what you would expect for this 100,000-year-old rock, because the dating isn't that sensitive. And on the one that's over that, when other people checked what he published about this, they found flecks of other crystals in that particular sample that are consistent with something called a xenolith, which is a rock that is much older than the lava that's included in the lava because its melting temperature is much higher than the melting temperature of that lava. So it's sort of like, let's say you wanted to freeze some ice, right? So you put some ice in the freezer, you come back tomorrow, or some water in the freezer, sorry, you come back tomorrow and you say, okay, that ice is about a day old. Cool. But let's say instead, first you put some iron filings in the little ice tray. And the iron filings are probably 10, 15 years old. Who knows when they were formed, right? Maybe they came out of a forge 10 years ago. And then you freeze the water. And then you take the ice out and you say, aha, see? Iron filings are 10 years old. That means that either the ice is 10 years old or we just have no idea how old the ice is. No, we can still tell.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. And his response to this was, nuh-uh. That was it. He basically said, nope, they're not xenoliths. And has not addressed it since.
Yep, I win.
So the one time.
Thanks for playing.
Yep. So in other words, every single result that he got was consistent. And then, of course, they'll complain with is it convenient that radiometric dating can give us accurate ages for rocks that are so old that no one was there to observe them forming. But we can't get that for younger rocks. Well, there's this one volcano that you might have heard of. It was called Mount Vesuvius.
Yeah.
It destroyed a couple Roman towns. One was Herculaneum, and the other one was Pompeii. We know what year that happened on. It was AD 79 or 79 CE, depending on which convention you prefer. And when they were radiometrically dated, it came back with exactly AD 79 as the year once you subtracted the age from the current year that they were tested on.
Amazing. Almost like science actually does what it says. PhD Tony,
Yep.
$5 says, cosmogenic exposure dating at the top and bottom of the Grand Canyon shows a difference of almost 10 million years.
Yeah, that's pretty in line with most estimates based on other radiometric dating and erosion rates and whatnot. The erosion rates are a little trickier to use because different layers have different hardnesses. So you have to take into account how fast it's going to erode through different layers, as well as we don't have great paleo flow data. So it's always a little bit tricky to say, well, what if the volume was higher? But overall, yeah, pretty much every dating method that is used on the Grand Canyon says that it formed or started forming about 10 million years ago, and that the rock itself starts down in the Precambrian, in like the Hadean period, with the basement rock like the Vishnu schist and whatnot. And then by the time you get up into things like the Bright Angel Shale and whatnot, you're getting the Cambrian. And then it basically has rocks continuously through basically all of the Paleozoic. And then the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic rock is almost all gone.
I'm not going to pretend I know what all of that means, but I'm just going to believe you.
Okay. Basically, you can't find dinosaurs, but you can find trilobites in the Grand Canyon.
Fair enough. Guys, if you've got any questions for Dapper, please feel free to tag me or send a super chat. But we are going to look at some of the dumbest creationists. Now, on the Flat Earth side, we've got, Nathan.
Hey guys, you want to hear a funny story while we're all chatting, dude? I'm dating a first grader.
You can't say his name without him turning up, man. And, we've also then got Nathan Oakley.
Hi, my name's Nathan Oakley, and I have been lying to people about the Earth being flat for a lot of years. I did this to hide the fact I have a small penis.
I mean, he said it, And then there's Nathan Erickson. There's Nathan Robertson. There's lots of Nathans for some reason. You've got the equivalent over there in the land of creationists, don't you?
Yeah, so we have some Matts. There are 3 Matts that most prominently come to mind, but the 2 of them are particularly stupid. I'll start with the one who's not really as stupid as the other 2. That's Matt McLean. Matt McLean is someone who actually has a degree in paleontology and has done some basic paleontology work. And he's still a young Earth creationist, so he's still very, very wrong about, well, most things. But he knows enough not to be as stupid as these 2, which are Matt Powell and Raw Matt, or Matt Nylor, or Matt Man, or Dr. Matt, as he sometimes likes to be called, even though he does not have a degree. So I'll give a little preamble for both of them before we get into the video. Okay. Matt Powell is famous, in addition to the stuff I'm going to show, for 2 big things. One is pulling a full JM truth and thinking that the sun needs oxygen, and therefore there must be air in space. Otherwise, the sun would go out because it would run out of oxygen because it's a ball of fire, and fire needs oxygen. So yeah, he went full JM truth, and did not seem to realize that the faces that all the people he was talking to were like, what, and just incomprehensible. Like, how are you this dumb? Like, that just went right over his head. And then the other thing that he is famous for is saying that he doesn't think that there's any problem with cherry picking, which means that from now on, anyone who cherry picks anything that Matt Powell says is completely within their rights, because he doesn't see anything wrong with cherry picking, actually.
Something that Anthony Riley, Sleeping Warrior, said that, it's fine to cherry pick if it supports your argument. Yeah, well, then, in good company. Then the other one is Matt Nylor, or Raw Matt. Now, I'm not doxing him. He still advertises books that he has published under his real name, Matt Nylor. So, Matt, if you want me to stop saying your real name, stop advertising your books under your real name. But there you go. Yeah. He is famous for a number of things. One of my favorites was writing a blog post in which he said that a particular fossil animal didn't have molars, while showing pictures of the molars of the animal right there on the blog post. It's sounding more and more like flat earthers.
Yup. He also claims weirdly to have invented the kale chip while he was working as a cook at a restaurant for a hotel.
Did you say the kettle chip?
The kale.
Wait,
like
they make
leafy
chips
green
out of kale? The most
it's really gross.
Flavorless, bitter, horrible. Why would you... If he invented those, he needs a slap.
Right.
We've got a very important question for you in the chat from Pirajo Shack. He says, what is the sexiest dinosaur in Dapper's opinion? I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, that's a good question. I do have a thing for those sauropod front feet when they're actually correctly depicted. So maybe Maybe like a Chasmosaurus. That's a pretty good one, right? Like it's not too big, so you're not going to get crushed or anything. And as long as it's got the correct feet on, it's pretty great right there.
And guys, this isn't weird because in case you missed at the beginning, Dapper is actually a dinosaur. He's just wearing his human suit today. So, you know, him finding other dinosaurs sexy is a totally normal thing. It would be weird if we found humans sexy, frankly.
Exactly, right.
So you know.
Yeah, humans are gross and sweaty and no.
Craig Poole,
guys
been
are
there for 10 months, says Matt Powell was famous for having a giant inflatable banana he keeps in his backyard that he calls Dr. Peel.
This is also true. Yep.
Yes. JSS Tiger $5 says, can you please describe the rock layer and or elephants at the bottom of the flat Earth? Thanks.
I mean, I would presume that it would be some kind of igneous rock that is held up, of course, by elephants. And then those elephants are held up by further elephants that are lower than them. And then that's turtles. And then it's just turtles all the way down.
All the way down. All the way down.
All the way. Yeah. Right. All the way. Just like Jadzia's spots. They go all the way.
Jadzia.
Rest in peace.
Ooh, Ezra.
Yeah.
Jadzia.
So Raw Matt is also famous for a few
Ezra
other
grew
things.
on me. By the end of DS9, Ezra grew on me. By like the last few episodes, she busted out some heroic shit, sorted out her weirdness with Worf, and she kind of grew on me. But she was no replacement for Jadzia.
Yeah, it's true. So Raw Matt is also famous for a few other things. One is that he put up on his website a link to a PDF that itself was purporting to be a paper published by PLOS ONE, which is a online open access peer review journal. It's a real journal that publishes, like real scientific papers. And he had the watermark for the PLOS ONE journal up at the top of his paper. He had a DOI link, which is something you'd find on a lot of scientific papers. Basically, it allows anyone to find the exact document that links to it. That DOI didn't work. It didn't go to anything. PLOS ONE did not publish this. The paper didn't even fit their formatting guidelines. So if he had submitted it to them, it would have been immediately rejected just on the grounds that they're not even going to look at it until he can do things like align the text to the left instead of the center.
It's almost like there was a mistruth.
Yeah, so he was called out about that, and I have a video talking about how Raw Matt has committed academic fraud, which, in case you're wondering, is not the same thing as legal criminal fraud, and it is not the same thing, although I had a number of young Earth creationists say, you can't just accuse people of crimes, that's slander. I was like, I didn't accuse anyone of a crime. Academic fraud isn't a crime, it's just a misdeed, if you will.
Yeah, it's just being a bit of a dick.
Right. The point of the paper, by the way, was to try to explain aspects of human genetics on the basis of, like, well, Noah was really, really old, so his sperm was probably all messed up. Sure.
Special hello to our three-armed doctor, Chesh, Dr. Tregan in the chat, played by the wonderful Chesh.
Hi, Chesh. Let's see. What are some other good ones that he has come up with? Oh, he's also famous for mocking and celebrating the death of a science communicator who had cancer and who hid that for most of his public life. And then he mocked him on the basis that he could have cured his cancer. Raw Matt could have cured the cancer with some herbs and tea, because he claims to be certified in every system of herbalism on Earth. He also claims to be an ordained Essene, which is a now extinct sect of Second Temple Jews who didn't ordain anyone ever and who haven't existed since the 1st century. Yeah, he's also been caught numerous times deceptively editing videos, including debates. Of course, this is Matt Powell has too. So Matt Powell has numerous times edited his debates to cut out good points from his opponents so that you just don't see them happen.
Yeah,
so when you compare
quite a lot to
his version,
it's so much like Flat Earthers.
Yeah, it's weird how many commonalities there are. So yeah, I think that covers the background for Matt Powell and Matt Nyler, or Raw Matt, as I usually call him.
All right, so you've got some interesting videos for us to watch of them being extra stupid.
I do. So just let me know when you're ready, and I will. Oh, is that it?
The Turtle Moose for £2 says, also the layer that contains the burnt crispy bits. We don't talk about the burnt crispy bits.
I mean, that's just the lava.
Yeah.
By the way, I think if you click on the video itself, that'll go full screen.
Dapper Dinosaur, Firminger MSC says, Dapper, if you're going to list at least one of Romat's idiotic statements, tell FTFE about pre-Yiddish.
That's true. Yeah, he did once say that the Bible was written in many languages, and one of the ones he cited was pre-Yiddish, which is just Old High German. It's not like that's... And also, no, none of the Bible is written in Old High German. None of it. It's written in Hebrew and a little bit in Aramaic and Greek, and that's basically it. All right.
Right, so which Matt is this?
So this is Matt Powell. Matt Powell is also famously a fairly abusive piece of shit, who there are recordings of abusing people, so that's fun. Keeping in line with the whole flat Earth, young Earth, basically the same thing.
And he has
all right, so this is him
called Dr. Peel.
Yes, he does. Yeah. Now this is Raw Matt's video about T-Rex. So here we go. Let's learn about T-Rex.
Hey guys, this is Matt Powell. So after the duck-billed dinosaurs surfed to Africa and went extinct,
we got to talk about that first. So
wait, he's a young Earth
for some reason
he doesn't think dinosaurs exist, but
yeah, he's mocking what he thinks the scientific consensus is.
Right.
So Matt has numerous times looked at headlines about rafting of animals, something we know happens because we've seen it happen in living memory. Like, just in the last 20 years or so, a population of green iguanas rafted to a new island that never had any iguanas before, and now it does. So, like, we know this is a phenomenon, right? Animals get washed out to sea, and they sometimes survive to make it to landfall. So, he cites this about hadrosaurs managing to get from basically North America to Africa by rafting as some kind of weird gotcha, because sometimes lay-level articles will use the word surfing as sort of like a tongue-in-cheek way to describe rafting, which is really just animals clinging on to plant debris during a storm.
Oh, it's him not understanding context. Right, I see.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so for that reason, he then conjures up images of animals, you know, like catching waves, and like, see, that's ridiculous, which, okay, yeah, it is, but you're the only one who thinks that's what that means, Matt.
That's, again, like, very flat earthers. It's a particular fallacy that he's using about it, making something look extra ridiculous. I can't remember the name of it.
I mean, it's basically a straw man. There's probably more detail that we could figure out, but yeah.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
And after the sauropod dinosaurs farted themselves into extinction.
Again, this is something similar. So Fox News put up an article about a paper in which they said that dinosaurs, quote, gassed themselves into extinction, British scientists say. You probably won't be surprised to learn that that headline was completely inaccurate and wasn't even reflected in the article itself, right? So if you read the article, you would find that nowhere in the article does it say that. So what probably happened was some editor didn't think the headline was punchy enough, and so they changed it without the reporter's permission. That's my guess. I can't say for certain. But what was actually reported, both in the article as well as the paper the article was about, was that it is possible, given the estimated biomass and caloric intake of sauropods at the end of the Jurassic, that they may have slightly contributed to the global warming trend at the end of the at the end of the Jurassic. That's
the
it. That's what the paper said.
The amount of cow farts have apparently
exactly
helped, but what he doesn't understand here, and it's very much like flat earthers, is that people that write these stories aren't themselves scientists. They're people that write articles that want to make you click on something. Now, what sounds better? Particular breed of dinosaurs helped contribute towards global warming and extinction, or dinosaurs farted themselves to death. Which one are you more likely to click on,
The second one. And actually, it didn't even contribute to extinction, according to them, because there was no extinction at the end of the Jurassic. So it didn't even contribute to any extinctions that we know of. It literally just was like, the temperature would have been here without the sauropods. Instead, it was here. That's it. That's it. That's the entirety of the study. And Matt, rather than even reading the article that he's citing about this, he just looked at the Fox News headline.
Of course.
That's all he did.
Yeah. Icy Spin says, Matt Powell claims that time playing video games is correlated with ugliness, and that when you stop playing, then you become hotter in your appearance.
He does. Yep. Matt Powell has this weird thing where he just kind of hates fun. He's ranted about video games. He's ranted about anime. He's ranted about people watching sci-fi and fantasy. He just kind of hates fun, is what I can gather.
But,
Which
I mean,
he must
I
have
play
been the
video
most
games
boring
nearly
kid.
every day, and I'm fucking gorgeous.
I mean, tell it to Matt Powell. I'm not disputing that.
There was one species of dinosaurs that made it through these many, many millions of years.
Actually, the number of dinosaur lineages that made it through the end of the Cretaceous is probably more like 3 or 4. They're all birds. And among those 3 or 4 lineage, there were probably dozens of species each. So, like, the number of dinosaur species that made it through was probably more like, I don't know, like 40 to 100 or something like that is a more reasonable estimate. And they gave rise to modern birds. So, yeah.
Of time.
And now they taste delicious.
They do. In fact, actually, I like chickens. I think they're cool. You know, I've never owned my own chickens, but like, I don't know. I like they're just fun animals. Plus, they're great garbage disposals, right? Any food scraps that you have, they will turn into eggs.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wonderful.
I do find it interesting that, you know, scientists kind of got what a lot of dinosaurs, popular ones, looked like completely wrong. You know, you think of what the T-Rex in Jurassic Park was like, but the T-Rex would have basically been a big chicken.
That's probably less true for the T-Rex. So we have some skin impressions from T-Rex, and they don't show feathers. And a lot of that probably has to do with how big T-Rex was, because we know that some of its close relatives, like Eutyrannus, did have feathers, but they weren't pennaceous. So the thing that looked more like a big chicken was probably like Velociraptor or Troodon,
Right.
Things like that. Yeah.
So do you think that a T-Rex looked like a big lizard? Or do you think it would have had more bird features?
So it had some bird-like features. So, for instance, its legs were very, very bird-like. So it probably had very bird-like feet and legs. Its lungs were probably very bird-like, because we know that avian-style respiration goes back at least into like Tetanura, which is a large group of most meat-eating dinosaurs that you've ever heard of are Tetanurans. The only exceptions are like animals like Carnotaurus or like Ceratosaurus, but like T-Rex, Giganotosaurus, Spinosaurus, Velociraptor, Allosaurus, all of these are in the group called Tetanura. And one of the features that seems to be common to a lot of them, or all of them really, is a bird style of lung. So it probably breathed like a bird. It might have sounded a little bit like a very deep, like a registered bird, like maybe like an ostrich, but probably even deeper.
That sounds terrifying, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, ostriches can make some scary sounds. They're kind of like deer, where like if you don't know what they sound like, you'll be surprised by the kind of weird sounds they make. I remember when I found out what deer sound like, as a kid, obviously, and I was like, really? That's kind of scary for an animal that I don't normally think of as very scary.
Yeah, a lot of animals make really horrible noises that you don't realize.
Yeah, I've removed a lot of music from this, so the audio is going to be a little uneven, and I muted some of it because, well, it was Nintendo music, and I didn't want any copyright problems.
Okay.
So. Yeah, Matt has a tendency to put copyrighted music because he mostly gets donations. He doesn't rely on things like Super Chats or AdSense or anything. So he doesn't care about monetizing his videos directly. He monetizes them through people donating to like his cause because it's a religious thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
So this is what evolution actually teaches, is that T-Rex dinosaurs turned into lunch at KFC.
Which is not true. Tyrannosaurus actually evolved long after birds had already evolved. In fact, after presumably like real crown birds like we have today had evolved. We know that they evolved after the chicken and duck group split off from other birds. So we already have the group that contains chickens and ducks is called Galloanserae. And we have such birds in the end Cretaceous when T-Rex lived. So basically, birds like chickens had already evolved by the time T-Rex evolved. T-Rex went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous and has no living descendants. It is related to the ancestors of birds, but it is not. I know where he got this from, though, and it was a website for babies that said that T-Rex evolved into chickens.
And season 6 of Red Dwarf.
Well, okay. But yeah, it was. He showed it on screen in one of his other videos. It's down now as far as I can tell. But back when it was up, it was literally like for 2-year-olds. It was for parents to read to their babies, and that was the source that he went with for this claim.
I mean, you could say that the same as us and chimpanzees have a common ancestor, T-Rex and chickens have a common ancestor.
Yep, much farther back, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The relatedness between T-Rex and a chicken it's a little bit closer to like the relationship between a human and like a platypus. They're really not that similar. Yeah. But there is a relationship. We're both humans and platypus are both mammals, and chickens and T-Rex are both dinosaurs. In fact, they join at Coelurosauria, which is about as far back as the common ancestor between humans and platypus.
And so that's what evolutionary theory is. And, obviously evolution teaches a lot of weird things. But
maybe.
But if you look at the anatomy of a chicken... Oh, good grief.
Even the chicken doesn't like you, Matt.
Yeah, I love that even the chickens hate him. But they know. They're stupid, but they're not that stupid. Like, this guy is stupid even for us, and we're chickens.
Look at the build of this chicken. You can see that it clearly descended from a T-Rex.
Which, again, no.
Not really. You can see how in a T-Rex they had short, stubby arms. And apparently now the chicken's able to do a handstand with those arms because those arms evolved down into its legs for one.
What? Wait, what? So, no, hold on. No, the short, stubby arms would be the wings, not the... You fucking... What?
Yeah. He seems to think that the scientific consensus is that T-Rex arms specifically evolved into chicken feet, which, first of all, no. T-Rex, again, didn't evolve into chickens, but the animals that did evolve into chickens, those were feet the whole way through.
Yeah.
The wings are arms. They're modified arms. You could check this embryologically, right? Like, the legs of a chicken connect to hip bones, just like they do in a T-Rex. Yeah. The wing bones connect to the shoulder bones, like the scapula and the coracoid, just like they do in T-Rex.
Just like if you look at the wings of a bat, you can actually see the the individual digits that very much like a human hand and stuff, and that.
Yep.
God.
Interestingly, so animals like Velociraptor and Deinonychus and Troodon are some of the closest dinosaurs that aren't birds to birds, and they have 3 fingers that grow in embryo, and they have 3 fingers as adults. And those same 3 fingers are the 3 fingers that grow in embryonic birds that then fuse into the clubby wing bones at the very end of a bird wing.
Cool.
So, yeah, they fuse it. They fuse at certain slightly different parts of life for different animals. Basically, the more helpless a bird is when it hatches, the more likely it is that those wing fingers are going to be unfused when it's born, or hatched, I should say. And the more able to fend for itself a bird is when it hatches, the more likely they are to already be fused, because it's something that fuses as the animal grows. It's sort of like, how the skull bones on a human baby aren't fully fused and there's a soft spot and whatnot?
Yeah, that's
it's the same thing, except with finger bones.
For an ashtray, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, except it happens with finger bones in birds instead of skull bones. So,
right.
Yep.
This one wants to fly. So obviously they developed wings so that they could fly. Not really. Actually, that's another fail of natural selection.
So that is a statement that he just says offhand, and I've never been able to figure out exactly what he means by it.
Natural selection.
Yeah, like, what part was a failure? Because, birds have wings, and it's not like... Even if he thought that the consensus was that the only animals that evolved from dinosaurs among birds are chickens, and the other birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs somehow, even if that's what he thought, like, chickens can still fly.
Yeah, not very far, and as graceful as a flock of pigeons or something. But also, he's got what natural selection is completely wrong.
He's going to double down on not understanding natural selection.
Natural selection is a reaction to environmental pressures.
Mm-hmm.
There's not been a reason for chickens to fly for a long time. Because we stick them in a barn, make them have sex, and make more chickens so we can have eggs and chickens. And...
Yeah, in fact, modern domesticated chickens are worse at flying than their wild ancestors. I think it's the green jungle fowl, or it might be the red jungle fowl.
Kind of like a forced evolution, because we've given them that environmental pressure, which then they've reacted to. They don't need to expend the extra energy to fly, so they go to other things like creating more mass, and But no, he's no idea what natural selection is.
Yeah, so we'll see more of that.
So natural selection didn't do very good things for this chicken.
Fun fact: there are more chickens on Earth than there are humans, so chickens are doing okay when it comes to things like natural selection.
Yeah. What would you?
In fact, I guarantee.
What would you rather fight? 100 chicken-sized horses or 1 horse-sized chicken?
Chicken-sized horses.
100 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep kicking.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Right? Most of the damage-dealing ability of horses depends on their size. Chickens have claws that will hurt no matter how big they are, but they just get worse as you scale them up. So I feel like a kick from a downsized horse is probably not going to be that bad compared to the claws of a chicken.
Yeah.
Plus, if it's a male chicken, they've got literal spikes that are just for fighting with.
So, yeah, a horse-sized chicken is a monster then. It's
Yeah,
a T-Rex.
yeah, no, it's... Yeah, I would definitely take the 100 chicken-sized horses. Mm-hmm. I still would lose. I would probably still lose either fight, but like, I would probably last longer.
You
with
take
the
some with you.
Yeah, exactly.
I guarantee you, she's scared to death of me, and that's not really how a T-Rex would be if it was truly survival of the fittest and only the strongest survived.
See, there's another problem he has with natural selection. When creationists hear survival of the fittest, which I don't actually like as a phrase anyway. Yes. In fact, most evolutionary biologists don't like it as a phrase anyway. It's a bit misleading. But they think of fitness as like the thing you go to the gym to get, right? Like, look how much I can bench. That's how fit I am. Nope. What fitness means in terms of evolutionary biology is your reproductive success that then gets carried down to future generations. And the way it's often measured is by grandchildren who themselves reproduce. Right, so that way you get a few generations worth of data in there to see what your fitness is.
Yeah.
So if you have 3 grandchildren,
you exist within your environment, right? And
right. And so if you don't reproduce, it doesn't matter how much you can bench press or how big and scary you are. You're not fit according to evolutionary biology. And if being small and timid results in you reproducing more than big, scary members of your species, then your species is going to get smaller and more timid.
Yep.
Because that's what's fit. And so, but Matt just thinks it's like, how fast can you run? How much can you bench press? And in some cases it is, right? There are cases in which it's better for an organism to be bigger and faster and stronger.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
Like the finches on the Galapagos Islands that Darwin found, as they evolved and there was less resources, the ones that were smaller and had thinner beaks could get the nuts and seeds that were in holes and were the ones that were able to procreate. And then their generations were the ones that were able to procreate. So they were smaller than their ancestors, but they were fitter to survive in that environment. Yeah. In
fact, there's a phenomenon called island dwarfism, where large animals that find themselves on small islands evolve to be smaller because it's easier to get enough calories if you're small, and the island has limited calorie supplies.
Yeah.
And so we actually have fossil dwarf elephants that were about the size of a pony. That we know of, that just got to an island. It was too big. That's right. They were too big for the small island, so they evolved to be about the size of a pony. And if you were around a few 100,000 years ago, you could have gone to this island in like the Pacific Islands and walked around with elephants that were shorter than you are, assuming you're a relatively normal-sized human.
Prosthetic Head asks, what conditions made dinosaurs evolve to lightweight flying creatures?
So it's a little hard to say because we know that they were facing competition from pterosaurs, who themselves were quite adept flyers in terms of the flying niche. So it's a little unclear right now exactly what pushed certain groups of dinosaurs towards flight, but we do also know that it happened at least a couple times. So, for instance, we know that Scansoriopterigids developed their flight capacities largely independent of most other birds. Well, they're not birds, but most birds. But it does seem like it might have been as simple as initially something like evasion of predation while living in trees, which is what you see with like flying lemurs, flying foxes, or not flying foxes, those are just bats, flying frogs, flying squirrels, sugar gliders, those gliding animals. So it might have started with just that, right? Like they wanted a quick way to get away from one tree to the next when attacked or otherwise threatened. And that might have then opened up new foraging options for like flying to catch small prey, because we know that the earliest birds were pretty much exclusively meat eaters. And then from there, it would just be, well, as long as additional aerodynamic capability and as long as additional extending of the glide is more and more, continues to be favorable, then it favors you doing things like adding energy to your glide so that your glide can last longer. Because remember, the difference between flying and gliding is just flight is when you add more energy than gravity takes away from you as you fall.
Yeah.
And that energy goes into you either maintaining or gaining altitude. That's what flight is. A glide is just when the rate at which you can add energy is lower than the rate at which gravity converts your potential energy into kinetic energy as you fall. So once you pass that threshold, you've gone very smoothly from gliding very, very well to just into flying. But yeah, the exact thing is hard to determine. One of the problems is we don't have a great record of exactly what the first dinosaur was that could engage in powered flight, like flapping motions, because by the time we get to Archaeopteryx, which is already very similar to like a Deinonychus or a Velociraptor, to the point that like you could confuse their skeletons if you didn't have the feats. By the time we get there, it looks like it's already capable of some amount of flapping, and we don't have a more primitive bird that we can easily look at, so it's kind of, it's not super clear.
Well, it's fine. We read Whitsitt's manifesto the other day, and I'm pretty sure he said that the Jesuits have got a time machine, unless I misunderstood what he said.
Well, we'll just have to ask the Jesuits.
Yeah, obviously. I'm not sure he knew what the Jesuits were, but I'm pretty sure he implied they had a time machine and influenced the Romans or something, even though they were...
Yeah. It's weird how the Jesuits, who are a group of Catholics that don't even go back as far as Catholicism itself goes back, were able to influence things that happened before Catholicism happened, which is just crazy.
So they had to have time machines. It's the only thing that makes sense. The Fluffy Atheist for $5 says, young Earth creationists don't think dinosaurs didn't exist. They think they were on the Ark. I solved the riddle of what a kind is on my channel. It's a genus.
So most young Earth creationists do think that dinosaurs got on the Ark and then just kind of promptly died afterwards. It's
the
weird.
big
Some
scary
of them think
reptile birds died. Sure they did.
Yeah. Some of them think that dragon legends are about dinosaurs, which there's some truth to the possibility that maybe some dragon legends were based on dinosaur bones, but there's no good evidence of living dinosaurs. My favorite thing is when they show a picture of a dragon from like medieval art or something, and they're like, look, it's a dinosaur. It's like, okay, which one? And nothing. They don't have anything. Or sometimes they do have something, and then you actually look at the real animal and you're like, those don't match up. Another one of my favorites was there was a picture, this medieval picture of animals coming to see. I think it's actually coming to see like the Virgin Mary or something, like at the nativity scene. And there's a camel, and as a result of how old this painting is, it's like a fresco on a wall. As a result of how old it is, the pigment on the camel has changed color, and now it's bluish. And I was told that was a sauropod. And I look at it, I'm like, it's got 2 humps and a camel face and fur.
But it's blue.
But it's blue that was the response. It's blue and it's got a long neck. And I'm just like, yes.
Oh my God.
The more likely option is that, in fact, a short, humped, camel-faced sauropod was depicted in blue on this monastery on a mountain in Greece that most likely no one there had ever seen a camel on. Anyway, that's the more likely option, was that they saw a sauropod on this mountain in Greece, and they painted a blue camel. They painted a blue sauropod with camel humps and a camel face. The less likely option is that it's just a camel whose color has changed as a result of this painting being like 500 years old.
Nah, that's a sauropod, mate. You're just talking rubbish. The Drunk
I guess.
Show 199 says, my wife would say I farted her to death. Thanks for popping your super chat, Cherry. Brandolini's lawyer also popping their super chat, Cherry. €2 says, Powell still doesn't understand carbon-14 dating. No, I'm definitely not. I've seen that.
None of them do.
Spin 199 says, what dinosaurs survived the mass extinction?
So we don't actually have a species list, but we know that at least 3 to 4 groups of birds survived, and those groups of birds themselves have a divergence time which probably stretches into at least the late Cretaceous. So we know Paleognaths made it through as a separate group. So that's the animals like the tinamou, the extinct moa, the emu, the rhea, ostrich. That group survived. We know that Galloanseri had already evolved by then, which means that we know that the ancestors of chickens and swans and geese and grouse and partridges and whatnot, that's that group. And then it's not clear whether, at least it's not clear based on what I've read, I'm not convinced either way, whether or not the parrots and the raptors, the bird raptors, right, had diverged from other neonates into neoaves or not. So like that's Psittaciformes. So it's a little iffy as to whether or not those two had diverged by the time of the end Cretaceous. I think they probably had, but like I'm basing that mostly on vibes because the data that I've seen have not been completely conclusive. Then again, it's not exactly my, I haven't read every paper on the matter. So at the very least,
sounds lazy,
3 groups. Well, yeah, at the very least, Paleonaths, and then Galloanseri and the rest of neonaths were 2 groups, the 3 groups that survived, and each would have been represented by several species. Or in the 4 option, we have Paleonaths as one group, then we have Galloanseri, Psittaciformes, and neoaves as the last group.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much. CJ Lamerix gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much. Electric IPM, 10 Canadian dollars. My only question when it comes to dinosaurs is, did they have feathers? Was my entire life a lie? My new purpose in life is to see a big feathered T-Rex in a museum.
So you can find reconstructions of adult T-Rex with feathers. It's more common to find reconstructions of juvenile T-Rexes with feathers because that's a common thing you see with big animals today. Like elephants are born, and they have much more fur when they're born most of the time than adult elephants do. The same thing is actually true for whales. Whale calves that are born have more prominent hair around their mouth than they do as adults. Although adult whales do still actually have hair. It's very fine, and it's bristly, and it's spread apart a lot, but it's there. But it looks like T-Rex probably didn't have feathers. We have skin impressions. Unfortunately, they're from the places where the T-Rex would be least likely to have feathers in the first place. Ideally, you'd want some stuff from like the back of the neck, the top of the thigh, the shoulders, along the spine, because those are the places where it's most likely. Instead, we have it from like the inner thigh, the bottom of the neck, the belly, which are places where it's less likely to have feathers overall. But still, I do not think that adult T-Rex had feathers. However, we know that a lot of animals that were close related to it did. So we know Eutyrannus did because we found feathery Eutyrannus fossils. That is a Chinese Tyrannosauroid. Nanoxaurus was a Tyrannosauroid from, actually I believe it was a Tyrannosaurid from Alaska and probably Canada. We can be very confident that it had feathers because even in the Cretaceous, it got damn cold in Alaska. Like it experienced snowfall annually. So we know that had feathers. It's almost certain that some of the more early Tyrannosauroids like Monolophosaurus probably had feathers, although these would have been like downy, stringy feathers and not like feathers with like a rachis and barbs and barbules. And then when we get closer to birds, we know that Bipiosaurus had stringy, sort of like emu-like feathers. Not emu, sorry, cassowary-like feathers. So we know that, and that means that Therizzinosauroids probably did too, so that includes Therizzianosaurus, Falcarius, Bipiosaurus, things like that. Then when we get even closer, we know that things like raptors, like Dromaeosaurids, they had fully bird-like feathers, complete with like remiges on their arms/wings. We know they had quills. We found Microraptor with actual flight feathers because it could fly. We also know that Velociraptor had secondary feathers at least because we have quill knobs on its
flying raptors?
Yeah, Microraptor was probably a poor flyer. It was also about the size of a crow, so don't worry too much.
Okay. I mean, that still sounds terrifying, but...
Yeah. It probably wasn't as smart as a crow, if that helps. It was probably a lot dumber than a crow.
Yeah, that actually does. That does help. But although crows are very smart. Yeah,
crows are about as smart as chimps. They're ridiculous.
Yeah. For about 6 weeks, I had a crow follow me once, and it was terrifying. And I knew it was the same crow, and I would just see it everywhere. It was actually following me.
If you give them gifts, sometimes they'll leave you alone, or they'll follow you for more gifts, but not threateningly. So,
yeah. I was just wondering if there was like a wayward soul that like had some like stuff to finish, or something. I don't know.
So yeah, basically, we know that a lot of dinosaurs had feathers. The feathers were not always much like bird feathers. A lot of times they were more like hair. because they didn't branch, and then sometimes they also branch right at the base, like down. But yeah, the closer you get to birds phylogenetically and skeletally, the more we have evidence of bird-like feathers. Some other groups that we know were very feathered were Oviraptorosauroids. So that's like Oviraptor, Caudipteryx, Anzu, a few other animals like that. We know they had feathers because of their brooding behavior, because we have a fossilized Oviraptor it died in a landslide while brooding on its nest. And the position that its arms were in, it didn't actually cover most of the eggs, but they would cover the eggs if, like a bird, it had stiff feathers coming out of its arms that would cover the eggs. Which means basically either Oviraptor was just the worst mom imaginable, or it had feathers. And since really bad moms tend not to reproduce much, we think it probably had feathers instead. We know that the ornithomimids, they had feathers. They were relatively simple, but they were probably pinnaceous. So that's like Gallimimus, Struthiomimus, things like that. So remember Gallimimus from Jurassic Park? They're the ones that Dr. Grant says, they're flocking, just like birds. And then Timmy says, they're flocking this way, and then they're being chased by a T-Rex. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those had feathers. They would not have been
Just
naked
stand
and
still.
scaly like you saw in
T-Rex
Jurassic
can't
Park.
see you.
Yeah. No, T-Rex could definitely see you if you stood still. That would not help.
Next bit of Jurassic Park.
I don't know
when
if
the guy in the toilet gets eaten.
I love that part. That actually ended up in the final edit for a video I finished editing not that long ago.
Yeah. Bob became a member. Thank you very much. JSS Tiger, $5. Can you describe the evolution of flat earthers starting from monkeys? No, you got it wrong. They don't come from monkeys. They come from monkey poo.
Yeah. So the monkey poo, it just self-organized into a barely functional creature, and then it looked around and said, "I guess the Earth is flat."
Yeah.
And now
it
we
just started
have
shouting, "Large
Nathan.
bodies of water do not curve."
Yeah, always shout that at children so that you can get arrested later.
Hey guys, you want to hear a funny
Best.
story while we're all chatting, dude? I'm dating a first grader.
No, Nathan, it's not appropriate. Sorry.
Oh, that one always gets me. I'm going to hit play on this. We'll see a little bit more about Matt Powell.
Right, one more. Left-handed Jedi for $5 says, have they ever tested flying dinosaurs in a wind tunnel? NASA are working on that. Don't worry. Yeah, more Matt Powell.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not read any such studies, but then again, I've never looked at it for any, so I just don't know that one. Sorry.
That we started out simple and became complex, and then the strongest organisms and the strongest animals were able to survive and wipe out the weakest.
So again, that is not how fitness works, but we've already covered it.
Well, if that were true, why do we even have chickens?
Because chickens are really good at making more chickens. That's it. That's all fitness is, right? Chickens are great chicken-making machines.
Yeah, I need something to go with my rice, basically.
Yeah. And even in the wild, right? Like the green and red jungle fowl, which are the most closely related wild animals to domesticated chickens, they're doing just fine. They're not even threatened as far as I know when I last checked, right? They're doing great. It turns out being reasonably good at escaping ground-based predators and, having pretty big claws and being kind of ornery works.
Right. The fact that there is chickens means that they did do the survival of the fittest thing, right? Because they're here.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you look around. These are the animals that survived. They must be at least fit for their environment, at least as it was until humans started messing with things, right? So, like, I don't know what to tell you, Matt. It turns out the chickens are good at making more chickens, so they're fit. So there you go. It doesn't matter how scary they are. It doesn't, right? Like, earthworms aren't scary. There's probably more earthworms than there are humans. They're doing great.
I want that chicken to hurt him.
This
I don't think it does, unfortunately.
thing shouldn't even exist if evolution was true. It would have died off. I mean, they are...
By the way, it wouldn't exist if evolution weren't true because humans evolved it from a wild chicken. Just putting that out there.
They went from predators that could kill you down to, well, if you're like me, your very best friend.
Can you imagine thinking that chickens aren't all still predators? A large part of a chicken's diet comes from animals that it eats that are just running around. I mean, it's mostly like worms and bugs, and depending on where you live, like maybe lizards or mice or something.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But chickens are vicious.
I've seen chickens go after a mouse, and that mouse got ripped to shreds. But I do like how Matt Powell said that the chicken is his very best friend. I can understand that because no human could be your friend, Matt.
And yet the chicken still seems to hate him.
Yeah, the chicken's desperately trying to get away from you. No, Matt, we've talked. I'm not your friend. Put me down.
See, he's the chicken's friend. The chicken isn't his friend. That's how it works.
Not really. I didn't think that people would actually believe that reptiles actually grew feathers and started flying.
Well, they did, because they still do. I do kind of like the winged, armed, chainsaw-armed, fire-breathing T-Rex. That is fun. But here's the thing, right? Birds are reptiles. So there's nothing unbelievable about reptiles growing feathers, because everything with feathers is a reptile. All feathered animals are reptiles.
Don't tell Matt
that's what people believe.
Well, I don't think he's ever likely to talk to me, but if I do, I will totally tell him that.
Believe today. They believe that these reptiles, these Tyrannosaurus rexes from 65 million years ago, somehow grew wings, and obviously chickens can't fly.
Okay.
Isn't that a chicken?
Chickens can fly. You ever heard the phrase "flew the coop"?
Yeah.
That's literally based on the fact that sometimes chickens will fly out of their coops and you can't get them back.
They might not be the best flyers, but they can fly.
Yeah. Right, and him showing an example of a chicken falling off of a roof, basically, doesn't negate that, because, hey, Matt, how'd the chicken get on the roof?
Good point.
I'm guessing it flew there.
Oh, it just flew up there. I can now record it not flying down. Oh, it flew down. I'm going to put out in a video saying it can't fly.
That's another flat earth thing, like, hey, I get how this thing is consistent, but, like, how did it get that way? It's like, oh, I'm glad that you can explain, like, the rotation of storms with your, like, vortices caused by the sun.
Yeah.
How come they can't cross the equator? And how come the directionality doesn't change based on the season?
And how does the sun do that magic thing you've just said it does to make those vortices?
Yeah, it's like I said, like, you're just cherry picking, because obviously this chicken flew up there and now it's flying down, but you're only going to show me the down part. Good job, Matt.
Are you telling me a plane isn't flying when it's coming down to an airport?
Yeah, actually, landing planes disprove the possibility of human-powered flight.
Well,
What's actually happening is that all those airplanes are being loaded into trebuchets by NASA and launched into the air with a trebuchet.
I mean,
and then
air flight would be a lot more fun if that was the case, if it was just literally eating people. Right, guys, hold on.
Just white knuckle the whole trip. Oh man!
As you reach the peak, everyone starts floating.
Yes, because it's just a parabola. It can't be anything else, at least at that point. Oh.
That's the thing. If you're an evolutionist and you're looking for dinosaurs and you want to find dinosaur bones, look, you could find some live ones today.
Yeah, that's true. Those are dinosaur bones. But the thing is, if what you want to study is non-avian Mesozoic dinosaurs, studying avian Cenozoic dinosaurs, which is what we have now, doesn't help, right? No. It's like saying, if you think that humans evolved from apes, then why are you trying to look for ape ancestor bones when you could just look at human bones? Because those aren't the ancestors.
It's like,
that's the point.
They'd be like, flat earthers also don't believe in evolution. And they'd be like, well, if we evolved from monkeys, why is there still monkeys?
Oh, that's one of my favorites. And the answer, of course, is just that evolution is about branching.
Yeah.
And things that branch don't ever reconverge after they branched far enough. And so if you have different monkey species, they're all adapting to their environments. And most of those environments aren't environments where they're likely to evolve into. They're better off doing things like staying in trees and eating fruit.
Those are far too many words for a flat earther.
It's true.
To talk to flat earther, you need to say, us and monkey come from the same thing.
Okay.
You need to make it as few words as possible with as few syllables in each of those words.
Yeah, okay. See, I don't talk to very many flat earthers, although I did really piss off Flat Earth Aussie. I don't know if you saw that one. I debated him once, and instead of defending the globe, I just started arguing that the Earth is actually flat but centered around Antarctica, and I had my avatar standing on a flat Earth, like what it was just a polar projection, but from the South Pole, with the sun going still east to west, but the other way when it goes like clockwise versus counterclockwise.
Yeah,
and I was just pointing out how like this model is both flat and it better explains the stars and what happens in the sky where Flat Earth Aussie is over there in Australia. And he's like, well, that's just a ridiculous model. I'm like, why? Because of course he has no reasons that don't equally apply to his model.
It's ridiculous, but ask me why.
He actually got James to actually jump in as a moderator and make me decide to drop, or told me I had to drop the Flat Earth model and actually argue for the globe, at which point I just switched to spherical excess in surveying. But like, oh man, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus was not happy that my argument was just, it's the South Pole at the center, prove me wrong.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Let's play again.
Right here in my hands, I actually hold proof of evolution.
I mean, in as much as any animal is, yeah, you do.
Hold still. Hold still. So evolution actually teaches that these chickens were descendants from T-Rexes that existed 65 plus million years ago. They're the only species that...
Is that a shot from Tammy and the T-Rex? I'm only now connecting that.
Yeah, it looks too bad to be Jurassic Park.
I think that's the T-Rex from Tammy and the T-Rex. Wow. Okay. Okay.
Didn't go extinct, but just devolved instead of evolved into chickens. And
which isn't a thing. There's no such thing as de-evolution, right? The fact, all Matt is doing is he's making a judgment call. He's saying, I think T-Rex is greater than chicken.
Yeah.
Therefore, this is bad. But science doesn't care about your judgment calls.
No.
Right? Science can tell you how to make a nuclear bomb. It can't tell you if you should make a nuclear bomb, and if you do, it can't tell you where or if you should use it. Science does not care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your moral judgments.
So what should I do with the nuclear bomb?
Right. Science can't help you with that. All science can do is say what things are true about the physical world, and then you have to make your judgment calls about that.
But the nuclear bomb, it's beeping. What should I do?
Oh, you should... have you tried reversing the polarity of the tachyon field?
There's a button for that, actually.
Okay, yeah, do that, and then make sure you purge the EPS manifolds, because there's probably some baryon buildup there.
I'm going to have to get into the Jeffries tubes to do that.
Oh, okay. It actually does remind me of one of my favorite weird things in Star Trek, which was the episode where they do the baryon sweep. But baryons is basically just most matter that you think of as normal matter, which would mean that the entire Enterprise would just be swept away by the baryon sweep. And like, it's fatal to most forms of life. Like, yeah, being completely turned into like plasma would be fatal. I'll grant you.
Yeah, but the entire ship should have done that.
Exactly. But you know what? It's just technobabble. It's fine. All right.
So this is just a proof that natural selection fails for them, even if this was true, because natural selection...
It's just evidence that you don't know, or that Matt, sorry, I forget, I'm not talking to him. It's just evidence that Matt doesn't know what natural selection is.
No,
fundamentally cannot comprehend.
Doing the Flat Earth script of straw man an argument, argue against that straw man, claim I've won.
Yep. And that happens so much. Like, it really is astounding the degree to which flat earthers and young earthers are just the same.
And they say sets genes up for the benefit of the species and selects those genes that benefit the T-Rex. But here's the thing. The chicken didn't really get benefited by this.
There are probably more chickens right now than ever existed, than the number of T-Rexes that ever existed in the entire history of the species.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of chickens. They've done pretty bloody well.
Yeah, so there actually was an estimate recently that came out as to approximately how many T-Rexes probably ever existed. And it was, if I remember correctly, somewhere around like, it was in like the high billions, right? Like somewhere like 6 to 10 billion. There are more chickens than that right this day, right now. For me, it's the 18th of November, 2024. That's probably the 19th of November there where you are. There are more chickens right now than the number of T-Rexes that have ever existed in their entire history as a species.
Sorry, did you say there was possibly 6 to 10 billion T-Rexes?
Yeah, over the like several million years that they existed.
Right, okay.
Total. Ever.
Yeah, just nuke it, the whole place. Yeah.
Sorry, Montana. Yeah, so that probably means that there were like, a few million around at any given time, spread over their entire range.
Yeah.
In fact, the chicken went from being a predator in evolution theory to one of the biggest preys that are out there in creation now. They constantly have to put up.
Hey, Matt, most predators are also preyed upon. It's very few predators that don't have their own predators.
Fences and stuff to keep these things in and keep them protected from animals, because otherwise they're going to get destroyed.
Yet that's domesticated chickens, which again are the result of evolution that humans caused.
What does Matt think would happen if there was like 20 chickens and one wolf?
I don't know. I don't think he's ever thought about it.
I don't think that wolf would come off very well.
It depends on the chickens. So if it's chickens, just hens, it'd probably be okay. If there's a rooster in the mix, or even worse, if there's more than one, that wolf is going to have some injuries. Because chickens, like hens, actually rely on roosters in their social order to do most of the defense.
Yeah.
So chickens tend to run away. Roosters tend to just attack because, they're full of testosterone and piss and vinegar, and they have giant heel spikes that they drive into each other in battles for dominance.
Sounds like my average Saturday night.
Look, don't tell the cops that you go to cockfights on Saturday.
The greatest creature of all time, the T-Rex, the most fierce animal.
The greatest creature of all time? Yeah, according to you, maybe.
Yeah, by what metric?
Evolution doesn't care.
What metric makes it the greatest creature of all time?
Matt Powell really likes it.
Did the T-Rex have Netflix? No. Therefore, we fucking win.
It's true.
Well, devolved into a chicken, and people actually believe that?
No, Matt. No one actually believes that. I guess I can't say no one. There might be some crazy person out there, but that's not the scientific consensus. It's not a broadly accepted idea. Generally speaking, it is not believed by people that T-Rex evolved into chickens.
Folks, it just goes to show that evolution theory is a complete joke on all fronts. It's a complete joke and a fraud. Anybody who just takes a moment to consider what evolution actually teaches about dinosaurs in general, it just goes to show the facts are on our side. And the fiction fairy tales are on the evolutionist side.
The facts are on your side. Brilliant. The facts that you don't understand have no basis in actually what they really are. The things that you've just made up mean that you are the one with the facts. Yeah, maybe facts mean something different to you, Matthew.
Yeah, can you see how I'm like, this really is just flat Earth for a different demographic.
Yes.
That natural selection is proof that the strongest survive. But here's
also, I don't know why we're doing this other shot that's color graded, but that's what was in this video.
The thing, 65 million years ago, if evolution were true, this would be your worst enemy right here. This thing would have eaten you alive for dinner.
Also, this entire video is up unedited on my channel because he put this in it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it.
He actually came into my comments to thank me, and I was like, I don't think this is going out to the audience you wanted, Matt, but okay, you're welcome. All right, so after this, we switch over to... Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. I'll just quickly catch up on the super chat. Signa Step, $5 says, please tell Plan and Walk the pronunciation of my name is Signa Step. No, it's not, but okay. It is, because I've told you it is. But thank you very much. Dihydrogen monoxide for £5 says, what wind chill of -8? What the hell is wrong with the weather? Honestly, I do not fucking know. Like 2 days ago, it was quite pleasant, like 12, 13 degrees C, right? I was even thinking of hanging the washing out. I got this morning, it's like someone's turned a switch and it was fucking -12. So what the hell?
You should make negative temperatures illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. Tovio Primataki for €2 says, how good is the vision of a dinosaur as compared to a human?
So, I mean, it's going to vary, right? Not every species is going to have the same degree of visual acuity.
Let's say T-Rex.
But it's also hard. So T-Rex we know was actually pretty good. We can say that for one big reason. it had binocular vision like a human does. So if you looked straight on at the face of a T-Rex, the eyes would be facing you. And that really only happens in predators that use their vision to hunt. And predators that use their vision to hunt usually have pretty decent vision. So we know that T-Rex probably had very good vision. But overall, it seems like they probably none of them that were in the Mesozoic, in like the Cretaceous, Jurassic, Triassic, probably none of them were as good as like a hawk or an eagle. But we also know that pretty much all birds have pretty good vision, in most cases better than human vision, with very few exceptions. And since it's common to basically all birds, it's probably also something that was around at least in the theropods. It would be that most theropods probably had better vision than an average for a human. We also know they were mostly diurnal, and mammals were mostly nocturnal at the time. And what that means is that dinosaurs just had more light available to them, so they were probably more vision dominated than mammals were, who are mostly smell dominated. Humans are a weird exception because primates are weird with that. But most mammals have poor vision and better smell. Humans are the odd bunch. Well, primates are the odd bunch there. But then again, there's also things like how good vision did like Stegosaurus or Ankylosaurus have? Probably not that great because they didn't likely need it. So the plant-eating like ornithischian dinosaurs probably had worse vision. Unfortunately, we just can't say for certain how good any given extinct dinosaur's vision was because we're not going to find their eyeballs. So,
Oh.
Yeah. I know, it's sad.
Oh, yeah, so Matt is definitely stupid. Have we got more Matt?
This is the different Matt. So we're going to switch over to Raw Matt. But first, we're going to get a word from Aaron Ra that he is cherry picking in order to not actually address Aaron Ra. So, Aaron Ra, I don't know if he's still promoting it, but for a very long time, he had this thing called the Phylogeny Challenge, which is basically, hey, creationists, get to the first level of demonstrating that your ideas have any validity whatsoever about evolution specifically. So, creationists say that not all cellular organisms share common ancestry on Earth, right? So, you as a human don't share common ancestry with a turkey. Okay. So the phylogeny challenge is find a group of animals that real science would say are closely related. Show why they're not, where that common ancestry breaks down in the like cladogram, and how you know. So if you think all members of Felidae, the cat family, which is what Matt's going to talk about, are all related, but they're not related to other closely related organisms like civets or hyenas or things like that, like mongoose maybe. Show why. Show where the common ancestry breaks down and how you know and how you came to that conclusion. So this is one of two attempts that Ramat made at answering this challenge. I will give you a spoiler now. He succeeded in neither attempt.
Just quickly before you do, Piro Jasak made a good point that you're a dinosaur. Can't we have your eyes?
Yeah, my eyes aren't that great, though. I'm pretty old. I'm like 160 million years old. After that point, yeah, the eyes are going to go.
Good point. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So, all right. Is it playing?
No.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Are Bengal tigers related to Burmese tigers and all other tiger species? Are all known species of tiger related to each other and all other panthers?
Yes.
Are all panthers related to felines, scimitar cats, and other felids?
Yes.
Let us begin with the cat
So this here is the actual raw mat audio.
played. We know the 8 main lineages go back to the Pseudaiurus, which...
That's Pseudaiurus, not Pseudaiurus or whatever he said. He is going to mispronounce a lot of words. That is a... He's got like the Cation thing going, where it's very clear that he has no idea what he's talking about because of how he pronounces some of these words.
He needs the anions.
Yeah, the anions.
Yeah, he needs the anions and the cations.
Yeah, the anions and the cations.
It descended from the Proilurus.
Proilurus. So at this point, he is conflating most basal with descended from. So Proilurus is the most basal known felid. Felid. That does not make it the ancestor of all modern felids. What basal means is basically it's the first one that we know of that branched away from what became the rest of all felids, right? So you've got Proilurus off here, and then over here you've got all the other cats. That doesn't make it the thing at the base. Now, it's technically possible that Proilurus is actually the common ancestor of all felids. It's very unlikely. But raw Matt can't distinguish these things because he does not have a nuanced enough understanding of how like phylogenetics and cladistics and evolutionary biology functions at a very basic level.
And
his
tying
level of understanding of
shoelaces.
evolution. Yeah. So he struggles to get to like a freshman level understanding in like a college freshman. Instead, he's working at like a 6th grade level of understanding of how evolution works.
Why are you being mean to 6th graders?
I'm not. I'm just saying that they probably couldn't really define the difference between basally branching and common ancestor in a cladogram, and I wouldn't expect them to. But they're going to learn because they're not stupid. Raw Matt is stupid, which means he's never going to learn. He's never going to progress past that point.
Proalirus is the first true cat, and the ancestor of the entire cat family, placing Polaris at the basal member of the feline classification.
Okay, so if he were to do the Arm and Raw challenge, he would show how he knows that Proalirus is, and we'll just grant him that it's the common ancestor of the rest of Felidae, right? Okay, sure. How does he know that that's the case? And why does that break down when you get to, say, like Nimravids, which are very closely related to Felids, but they're not quite the same thing? How does he know that? He's not going to tell us.
The bones of Proalirus are very similar to the living viverids and fossa.
Which breaks his entire argument, because those aren't cats. Why would the most basal cat have bones that are very similar to things that aren't cats, but that science says are related to cats? Well, I would argue it's because they're related. So one of the predictions of evolution is that as you go back in time to more and more basal members of groups, that groups that are currently very distinct will become more and more similar as we go back in time. So the earliest vivarid, which is like civets and the binturong and whatnot, most people in like Europe and North America have never seen a civet, but they're common in South America and parts of East Asia. So why would they be similar if you go back in time? Well, because they're related. And they were more closely related as you go back in time, because there's less time since they diverged. The same thing happens very famously with rhinoceros and horses. The earliest horses and the earliest rhinoceros are almost indistinguishable. You have to spend literal years, sometimes about a decade or so, getting good enough at telling their molars apart to figure out whether a fossil is a fossil rhinoceros or a fossil horse.
Okay.
Nowadays, you do not need to do that. You just look and you're like, that's a rhinoceros, that's a horse. They're very different. But back in time, they get more and more similar. And so just him pointing out that these things that aren't cats, that he doesn't think are related to cats, have the bones that look like civets. That's a problem for him. But he just is going to gloss right over it. He's just like, yeah, Proalirus looks a whole lot like a civet.
Yeah, so he's basically going, yeah, these things have clearly got a common ancestor, but I'm saying there's no common ancestors.
Right. Yep. It's like looking at Lake Pontchartrain and being like, yeah, see, that looks like the Earth is flat. No, it doesn't.
No, yeah, the curve
Directly
sure makes it look like it's flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of Madagascar today. Cat connoisseurs have long known that their feline friends have a wild origin.
Well, yeah, all domesticated animals are derived from wild animals. That's not news.
Although I got a different theory about cats, that they're actually an alien species that was sent here or has come here to test us and integrated into our society and actually domesticated us to see how we would treat them before they allow us into the Galactic Federation.
I will say, it is a pretty neat trick that they've managed to get humans to scoop their poop out of little boxes for them.
Yeah. You know, like people, like dogs and cats, the most popular pets, and the big difference between dogs and cats is that dogs will, they look at you like, this thing, it feeds me, it looks after me, it takes me for walks, it loves me, it keeps me warm, it must be a god. But a cat thinks, well, this thing picks up my poo out of a box, gives me food whenever I want, allows me to just lie wherever. I must be a god.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now scientists have identified that the house cat's maternal ancestors are traced back to one place, the Fertile Crescent.
Okay, so
Fertile Crescent.
The Fertile Crescent is basically like modern Iraq. It's also like parts of Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. but like it's that area, right? So it's like the Middle East, the Middle Eastern parts of the Near East. Okay, so the reason he finds this significant, he's not going to say it, but the reason he finds it significant, right, is because the Fertile Crescent is also where Noah's Ark landed. So there's a few different. So the Bible says that it landed in the mountains of Ararat, and there's a few different areas that are in contention for exactly what that meant to the people who were writing that. But all of them are in the Fertile Crescent or just adjacent. So he thinks it's significant that we can trace the maternal ancestry of all domesticated cats to the Fertile Crescent because, like, well, that's evidence of Noah's Ark. But what he doesn't do is bother to point out that a lot of other animals also can be traced back to where their, most recent mitochondrial ancestor lived, and it's not the Fertile Crescent. So if that's evidence of, if cats having their maternal ancestry going all the way back to the Fertile Crescent is evidence of Noah's flood, then animals that have their maternal ancestry going back to somewhere else, that's evidence against Noah's flood. But he's not going to take that. He's just going to cherry pick the ones that he likes, which is, this is one of them. And when he means maternal ancestors, so there's two types of DNA that don't cross over, right? So most of your chromosomes, when two people, or well, two animals reproduce, there's some crossover. So that the kids' resulting chromosomes aren't actually just from one or the other parent. They're actually, each chromosome is itself a mixture of both parents' chromosomes. Okay, cool. That makes those harder to trace. But the Y chromosome doesn't do that because it can't, because there's no other Y chromosome normally. And the mitochondria don't do that because they're not even on chromosomes. Mitochondria are basically just bacteria that live inside your cells, and they reproduce asexually. So that makes them easier to trace because they don't have the crossovers, which makes the math more complicated. And so that's why we have things like mitochondrial haplotypes and Y chromosome haplotypes and whatnot. So basically a study was done on cat mitochondrial DNA, which is only passed on from mother to offspring, and ultimately goes from mother to daughter to daughter to daughter to daughter and on. Right? So it's your female line ancestry all the way back, all females. The Y chromosome for mammals is your male ancestry all the way back through only fathers. And it turns out that the most recent cat whose mitochondria has resulted in all cat mitochondria today among domesticated cats lived in the Middle East. That's it. That's the whole thing. Matt finds that significant because he thinks it supports the flood. It doesn't.
Genetics proves that there are 8 main lineages of the feline cat order. 7 of the
demonstrates, because again, we have a pseudoscientist who thinks that science proves things.
Yeah. He doesn't understand anything about science, just like all flat earthers.
Nope. Mm-hmm.
Major cat lineages are linked by hybridization.
So what he means by linked by hybridization is that you can follow a chain of this can reproduce with this, can reproduce with this, that can reproduce with this. And you can eventually get from like a tiger to a little house cat. But house cats and tigers aren't known to be able to interbreed. And for some reason, he thinks that this is significant, even though in other places, not necessarily in this video, creationists will say that, well, if they can interbreed, then that demonstrates common ancestry. And I'll say, okay, yeah, sure. But then they'll also say that inability to interbreed doesn't mean that they aren't related, like through common ancestry.
To be fair, means that I don't know how successful breeding a house cat with a lion or a tiger is going to be.
Yeah. So for instance, if we wiped out all the cats that aren't house cats or tigers, they couldn't breed. But creationists would not say that for that reason they're not related to each other. They would say they still think they have a common ancestor, which means that we have something that can be confirmed. Common ancestry can be confirmed by creationists, but it can't ever be refuted. But that's the problem. They need to be able to refute it to be taken seriously. Because they're saying common ancestry is wrong. Okay, show me how. And no matter how many times you say, well, these animals can breed together, meaning that they do share common ancestry, unless you can say something about what means that they don't share common ancestry, that doesn't help. So this whole thing about interbreeding, it's completely meaningless.
Only one, the Bay cat lineage, has not been linked to hybridization. But this is speculation to this day.
Yeah, it's not a very well-studied group, so.
These 8 lineages, which are now 37 different species, all descended from 8 types of base cats. The puma ancestor gave rise to the cheetah and the jaguar of today.
And the jaguarundi. South American representation among felids is important, man.
Come on, it's just outrageous.
South America does not get enough love for its native carnivores, right? You know, there's the crab-eating fox, the short-eared dog, the maned wolf. Among the cats, we've got the jaguarundi. Come on.
Yeah, frankly, I think it's one of the most important issues of today, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, the ocelot, are we going to forget about the noble ocelot?
No, with its extremely pungent ammonia-based urine.
Mm-hmm. It's crepuscular.
Lynx gave rise to the Iberian and Canadian bobcats of today, and so on down the line. Today, we have 44 cat breeds alone, just in the common house cat.
So notice, at no point is he saying anything that anyone is contesting about this, right? This is all just him saying, like, well, yeah, of course, look at all this stuff about cats, but the thing is, everyone knows that already. He's trying to answer the phylogeny challenge, where the point is, how do we know where the common ancestry breaks down? All he's doing is saying the ways in which people determine common ancestry among cats are valid. But the problem he's going to face here coming up is that those are the same techniques that are used to demonstrate common ancestry that he doesn't think is valid. Those same techniques, whether it be genetic, morphological, or whatever, are also applied to link cats and dogs and bears and mice and humans and lizards and all the fish in the sea.
It's just ultimate cherry picking.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, it is very easy to track something back to a single species.
Yeah, Matt, it is. That's why evolution is a thing. That's why we believe in common ancestry, because it is easy.
Yeah, he just debunked his entire argument.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, he did.
Well, what happened when you track back to the 8 main lineages? Well, when you find the branch narrows, you get to a few base cats.
I don't really know what he means by when the branch narrows, because that's just a thing on a chart. So, like, I think he's conflating the shape of this chart with actual events, which, no, not really. Like, those horizontal lines aren't there for anything except, like, visual simplicity. I don't know what he imagines when he says that.
Like the Pseudolyrus and the Proalyrus. Even a 2005 study placed the Proalyrus as a basal member of the feline family.
Again, see how I said he doesn't know what that means, right? Because he's been spending this whole time saying Proalyrus is the common ancestor of cats, which isn't what that study says. It says it's a basal member, which isn't the same. So again, he's reading papers and he doesn't even know what they mean. It's like the Cation thing all over again.
This is like watching a video from Witsit where he's just reading a scientific paper and then going, "See, I'm right." No, you're not.
And it's just very obvious. He doesn't. Right. It's like everything in this says you're wrong. And also, why was it in contention as to whether or not Proalyrus was a basal felid? Because it was so similar to members of what are now other very distinct families, like Matt pointed out himself. The reason it was in question because it was like, well, maybe it's actually a vivarid, maybe it's a cat, maybe it's a nimrabbit. We are not sure, so we have to do a study to figure out just on which side of this branch it is. You wouldn't have had to do that study if those different families didn't share common ancestry, because there'd be no reason for their members that far back to look basically identical. So he's citing a paper which itself says, no, Matt, you're wrong about this.
Mm-hmm.
On my channel, we call that a Trojan source, and if we're drinking, we take a drink for it.
I'm not drinking again for a while.
This has no alcohol, so yeah, I'm not.
Apparently, I get naked on stream when I drink, and I'm not allowed to do that, according to my wife.
Actually, when I drink, it's almost always on stream. So people who watch my channel have seen like the vast majority of my drinking for like the last 3 years. If you've been watching my channel, you've seen like 80% of the times I've had alcohol.
So, not only do we have genetic data to support that this cat gave rise to all the cat kinds we see today.
Which we don't.
We don't.
We don't have any genetic data from Proalyrus. No. No, we don't. We only have genetic material from modern cats at the last like few 100,000 years max. We don't have any Proalyrus DNA.
He literally just pointed out how that's not true.
Yep, he's just making that part up.
We can also see that the genetic data shows extinct felids found in a fossil record were cats as well.
Not for any but the most recent ones. No, we can't. Matt seems to think that we just have genetic data for like all of these fossil organisms, for which we do not. We don't.
They just died out. We creationists could easily say...
I just love that Eve has like weird leaf pasties on, because like we can't show nudity. That's not acceptable. Even though her hair is also covering, so you could just do one or the other. But no, they went with both.
Go double it up.
Yeah, we had to make extra sure that this good Christian cartoon with nudity doesn't really have nudity.
I've never understood why man nipples are fine, yet women nipples are taboo.
It's called sexism.
I say, right, free the boobs, man. In fact, I think it should be mandatory for all women to be topless. It's just fair, I think.
No, I think people should be allowed to wear tops if they want to. I just also think they should be allowed.
You would not be welcome on
to be fair. In this, well, okay, maybe not in Ferenginar, but in the States at least, it's actually legal for women to be topless in a lot of places that you wouldn't think it is. It's actually legal in all of New York. Women do not have to wear anything on top in New York City.
I want to go to New York.
Unless, of course, well, okay, but most of them do because it's kind of cold there most of the time.
Oh.
And most of the other time, it's socially kind of awkward to not. But there was actually a case not that long ago where someone tried to go topless in a restaurant that had a dress code. And the manager was like, no, you have to put on something. Everyone does. It's the dress code. And she was all like, this is New York City. It's legal. It's like, yeah, but it's my restaurant. It's my dress code. And yeah, it turns out she was hauled away by the cops because you have to follow the dress code in a private business if there is one.
Yeah, otherwise they can trespass you.
Yeah, which don't get trespassed. It's a hassle.
Say that God had created 2 or 3 separate types of cat in the beginning.
Matt, the fact that you think it's 2 or 3 separate types means you don't even know that you can demonstrate the common ancestry of all cats. That's a problem for you. Because now what you're saying is directly opposite what you were arguing for before. You're contradicting. He can't even get a single story straight. That's the thing that bugs me the most, right? It's just like, at least have an internally consistent narrative. Nope, not even going to try.
During Creation Week. But that doesn't answer the phylogeny challenge, and I do not have any evidence for that.
You know what, Matt? You're right. That wouldn't answer the phylogeny challenge. I'm like, cheers.
But what I do have evidence for is a singular cat, which all cats descended from.
You don't, but okay, I do believe such a thing existed, but go on.
Which does answer the phylogeny challenge.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to the picture of the cat with the Punisher on his chest, please?
I suspect this might be photoshopped, but...
It's not. I've seen...
okay.
It's incredible.
All right. I mean, I've never seen this cat before, so I don't know.
Surprised Marvel's not sued it, though.
Yeah, well, it turns out cats are, like, really hard to get money out of. They just tend to be broke. It's really unfortunate.
Descended from, which does answer the phylogeny challenge.
By the way, this is an Answers in Genesis graphic that he's showing us here, where they show their creation orchard. And their idea is that they think there's some common ancestry, and that before the flood, which is why you see a flood here, there was some amount of diversification within their created kinds, and that the flood cut off all but one of those lineages from before it. And then when they got off the ark, then they started to diversify, but not evolve, diversify into other species, which isn't evolution, because they don't want to call it that, because then that would show that they're wrong.
But it is evolution.
It is evil. Yeah, it's not only is it evolution, it's evolution at a pace that no actual evolutionary biologist would find plausible at all. This is like supercharged turbo evolution with like extra nitrous added. In fact, in order to account for the post-flood elephant diversity, just with proboscideans, every single calf for centuries would have to be not just a different species from its mother, but also from all of its siblings. Every single elephant pregnancy would have to result in a calf of a new species for hundreds of years. I'm going to let you know that normally, when elephants give birth, the calf is the same species as the mom.
Just in general, that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
However, when flat earthers give birth, when parents give birth to flat earthers, they're not the same species.
Yeah, no, they're Homo stupidus.
Yeah.
which is also the title of an upcoming video of mine. So it's not about flat earthers, though. It's about a creationist paleobiochemist. I always have to do air quotes around anything that they do because they're obviously not real paleobiochemists. But yeah, Brian Thomas is he's going to be very, very wrong about human evolution, and I call it Homo stupidus.
And proves creationism to be true.
Again, for proof.
The evidence seems to be clear that God did create a single type of cat. Besides orphan genes and feline-specific ERVs and viruses.
Okay, so what an orphan gene is it's a taxonomically restricted gene. What that means is that it's a gene that's only found in a very small group of the organisms, which I don't know why I'm fuzzy.
Gone out of focus.
Yeah, I'll fix it. So we have these orphan genes, or these taxonomically restricted genes, at all levels of the tree of life, right? And so we have them at the species level, at the genus level, at the family level, at the order level, the class level, all over the place. So what does that mean for us then? I'll just turn this thing off, turn it back on, take that. Well, what it means is that there has to be a mechanism by which organisms, now I'm frozen, can actually evolve new genes, right? Like, it has to be that case. So what do we do with that then? Well, it means that there's a mechanism, there we go, where evolution can happen, right? And when he says that we know that cats are united genetically because they have orphan genes at the family level, what he's expecting is that they also have orphan genes at the genus and the species level, which means if having orphan genes is the sign of common ancestry and not sharing that orphan gene is a sign of separate ancestry, which is the argument he's making, every single cat species is a separate creation by God. He doesn't get to say that lions and tigers and kitty cats have a common ancestor. He would have to say that lions and tigers don't share an ancestor at all, even though they can interbreed. So
And,
again,
so let's assume that he's right, that there is, though, this single species of cat they all came from. He made the very big claim that this is evidence that God made a single species of cat. Let's give him that there was a single species of cat, whereas the evidence God made it.
Yeah, there's another thing right there. Is like, yeah, that you can trace all cats back to a single species, which is at least hypothetically true, doesn't actually indicate that it was God that made it.
No.
And yeah, his orphan gene actually works against him, because if his argument about orphan genes is true, then cats don't share a common ancestor. Sorry, Matt.
I love it when they debunk themselves.
Yeah. Also, humans share orphan genes with chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans. So if his argument works to unite all cats, it also works to unite humans with the rest of the apes.
Good
So,
job, Matt.
you know, maybe he shouldn't make that argument.
We even have more evidence outside of genetics now that shows the extent of the melanistic coat colors and patterns arose from a single original type that was either small spots or flecks. This
Melanistic coat colors, by the way, are just black. If you ever seen a black cat or a black panther, that's just a melanistic cat.
Yeah, I've got
And
black
he's
cat
claiming that
frisbee.
apparently they all had a common melanistic ancestor. I don't know. I don't really care. Like, whatever, sure.
is highlighted by changes observed in pelage patterns of jaguars and leopards during their development.
Now, that is cool research, right? Research into how cat spots work and, like, diffusion, antagonistic reactions and whatnot. It's all very cool science. It just doesn't help or hurt his case. It's just hey, cat coat patterns are cool. But yeah.
Therefore,
I just don't know
God
how
made
that's...
stuff.
Right, exactly. It's like, cool thing, therefore God is just never a really good argument.
Evidence is further backed up by a study by Liu and colleagues using their mathematical models. Since it's clear today that 8 species of...
Which he's not going to explain because he doesn't understand.
No, he's just going to say that they're there.
Yeah, right. See, this graph means cats share common ancestry. Which maybe it does. I don't know, because I haven't read this paper. But he certainly doesn't know how it does that.
Debunking himself again.
Created all 37 species of feline.
I do like this map. It is cool.
Today, then it's pretty obvious and feasible that God could have created a single feline to speciate into all the different kinds that we see today.
That's a big
like
leap.
Now.
That's a big leap. Single species of God means it's obvious that God made a single species of cat. What?
Right. Especially since, again, the same techniques that people use to determine that all cats share a common ancestor are the techniques that we use to determine that cats share a common ancestor with hyenas and civets and mongoose and dogs and cats and, or well, I said cats, sorry, and bears and seals and, I don't know, raccoons. The same techniques. The genetics works the same way. There are carnivora orphan genes unique to the order Carnivora. So, like, at every step, it works just as well if you just step right outside Felidae. So the fact that it works within Felidae, sure, that indicates there's a common felid ancestor. But it still works outside of Felidae, which means that there's a common carnivore common ancestor. There's a common placental mammal ancestor. There's a common mammal ancestor. There's a common amniote ancestor, which unites the mammals and the reptiles. There's a common tetrapod ancestor, which brings in the amphibians. There's a common fish ancestor, which brings in all the carp and whatnot. There's a common vertebrate ancestor, which brings in all the sharks. It keeps on going. All the same techniques work the whole way down. You can get all the way down to, like, trees and weird little single-celled things with flagella and archaea and bacteria, and eventually you get all of them sharing a common ancestor using the same techniques.
Know for a fact that all humans descended from a single common female ancestor, and we have all the different varieties and distinct people across the entire original line, nor any original species.
Okay, when it comes to the human thing, there's a person who was alive about a couple 100,000 years ago, who is now called Mitochondrial Eve. And she was called that literally because of the Bible story, right?
Yeah.
But it is important to note that in no way is this person anything like Eve, except in the sense that she is a common ancestor for all humans. So what Mitochondrial Eve is like this, right? So let's say, imagine your own family, right? And I don't know if you have any sisters, but let's just say that you have a couple sisters. Okay, so you have a couple sisters. Let's say one of them has a bunch of kids who themselves go on to have grandkids, who themselves go on to have great-grandkids, right? Her mitochondrial DNA is going to be passed down the female line into those great-grandkids, right? Yeah. So her mitochondrial line is going to keep going. But let's say your other sister either doesn't have kids or only has boys. So her mitochondrial DNA is not going to get passed down, even though she's alive with your other sister, obviously, in the same time, in roughly the same place. They're contemporaries. They probably know each other. But one of them doesn't have her mitochondrial DNA passed down, and the other one does. Well, that happens on a large scale in populations, right? Certain lines of mitochondrial DNA go extinct either because that female doesn't reproduce or that line of females isn't continued on with only females. At some point, males dominate it just by chance, and that line dies out. So what that means is, for any given species, you can take a look at their mitochondria and find how long ago the female organism that gave rise to all those mitochondrial lineages lived. But that organism is not the only female. She's not the only female ancestor that all those organisms share. She would have been one of a population full of other females, and the only difference between her and them is that mostly by chance, their mitochondrial lines went extinct. But they still have living descendants, right? Like if your other sister, whose mitochondrial line goes extinct, that happens because she only has boys, or like maybe she has a couple girls, but those girls only have boys. Well, that mitochondrial line is going to go extinct, but her children still exist. They just have other mitochondrial lines. They don't cease to exist. And so mitochondrial Eve was not the first woman. She was not the only woman. She is just the one female human whose mitochondria line has not died out. And if some distant branches of that mitochondrial line die out in the future, who mitochondrial Eve will shift forward in time to a different person.
Yeah.
Because it's a title that changes through time. And so, but for some reason, well, I know why, it's obvious. Creationists love to say that mitochondrial Eve is the actual Eve from the Bible.
Yeah, because
so, but it's not. It's mathematically inevitable that a mitochondrial Eve will arise in any given species, and that it will not be the first female member of that species.
Didn't have to make it onto the ark either. This is just an example of how many varieties can come from a single point. Unlike breeds of domestic horses, dogs, sheep, and cattle, some of which are thousands of years old. Most cat breeds were developed within the past 150 years.
Yeah, because that's when humans started intentionally breeding cats to look fancy. That's all that means. Up until then, cats were less domesticated than just like animals that lived around humans.
I still want to know how they got like 2 of each wild animal to calmly queue up and walk onto the ark and then not eat all the other animals.
It's just a miracle. They just say it's a miracle. God made them do it. Yep. They don't even try with that one.
Mainly in Europe and the United States. Now, in the textbooks, phylogeny of carnivores links cats, skunks, raccoon, bear, and wolves.
Right, but Matt, you already said that you thought there was some reason to say that cats were related to other families. So, like, the fact that you're cherry picking a chart that focuses on the dog side of carnivora and, uses cats as an outgroup doesn't change that, because that's all he's doing. He's, again, just cherry picking a chart that's really about the dog side of carnivora, because there's caniformes and there's feliformes. Feliformes is the cats and all the things that are more closely related to them than to dogs. Dogs is the dogs and everything more closely related to them than the cats. And this is like the deepest branch within carnivora. And so this chart is just a chart of caniform diversity that's focusing on caniformes. And the reason that cats are there is to show you what the outgroup is. What's the other side that we're not focusing on?
Paul in the chat says, mitochondria? You mean the stuff that determines how good a Jedi you are? No, that's midichlorian.
Yeah, the greatest lore addition that Star Wars ever had.
All is having a common ancestor. Totally the opposite of creation's predictions.
You notice how it has civets up there? And how civets are more closely related to mongooses and hyenas than they are to cats? But Raw Matt has already pointed out how the oldest cat that we know of looks like a civet. You know what that implies for the rest of that tree, right? It's that civets, mongooses, and hyenas and cats all share a common ancestor, which Matt has already pointed out the evidence for, but he's going to ignore that.
It just implies that Matt's a fucking moron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do they do this? Why do they...
Because that's where the evidence points, Matt. That's it. It's not a conspiracy. People aren't trying to take away your faith in God. I guess some people are, but science, by and large, isn't. It's not because they want to sin. It's not because they're horny. It's because it's where the evidence points. I say horny because they just want to sin is a common reason given by creationists for why people aren't creationists. And when you dig into it, it's usually horny stuff that they're talking about when they say sin. Yeah, it's usually like, well, you just wanted to have sex with your girlfriend or boyfriend or be gay or something. It's like, okay.
All right, virgin, shut up.
Yeah.
Assume this in the first place. It is solely because of taxonomy. Anything to...
No, actually, taxonomy was invented before common ancestry was widely accepted. It was actually invented by Carolus Linnaeus, who was himself a creationist, and a more hardcore creationist than Ramat is, because he would actually have said that every species was a special creation by God, not that like all cats are one creation. And Linnaeus was the one who invented what we now use as taxonomy. So taxonomy was around long before evolution was.
Them that falls into the carnivore can be linked. Thus, they now have to find other correlations to build their phylogenetic trees.
No. Nope, phylogenetic trees are still built on the same way as ever. I don't even know what he's talking about.
So next, they use homology, which is just ridiculous to me because a raccoon, wolf, and cat, well, they have more differences than they do similarities.
And how, you might ask, did he quantify that?
Right, well, let's just take an immediate look. Do all of them have skulls? Yes. All of them have rib cages? Yes. All of them have 4 limbs? Yes. All of them have ears? Yes. All of them have noses? Yes. All of them have eyes? Yes. Do all of them have tails? Yes. Do all of them have hips? Yes. They all seem pretty fucking similar to me.
They're actually more similar than that. They all have 5 fingers. They all have the same basic shape ungulate. They all have the same dental pattern. You ever notice how you have 2 incisors and then you get to your canines?
Yeah.
They all have 3 incisors, which is pretty unique to carnivora. They all have very similar anal scent glands that are used for communication and territory marking. They all have carnassals, which are the premolars that are designed to shear through flesh. And a particular shape of carnassal is unique to carnivora, and they all share it. They all share way more than you could even know just glancing at this picture.
But Matt said
what
that
are
they've got more differences, so...
Yeah, which he's not going to bother to tell us about. He's just going to say it. I guess, okay, but so what, Matt? You're just saying things.
But like all things, anybody can see what they want if they look hard enough.
No, Matt, you can, because that's all you ever do. Your entire life is just, you've decided that your particular interpretation of your favorite book, I was going to reach for a Bible, but I don't have one handy, is the actual, like, be-all and end-all of truth. And you don't care what's actually there. Anything you look at, you're going to see how it can fit into this book, and if it can't, you're just going to say it's fake. That's it.
Lastly, they use genetics. But what is a genetic comparison between a cat and a raccoon, or a skunk, or a hyena, or a wolf?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that the genetic difference between a tiger and a lion, who Matt says are the same kind, is significantly greater than the difference between a human and a chimpanzee, which Matt says are different kinds. So, yeah, we're going to have to use, like, consistent genetic thresholds for relatedness, and Matt wants to unite lions and tigers, which he clearly does. He's going to have to say that humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor, which he will never allow, because remember, according to creationists, humans are the special boys of creation.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that's because creationists, like flat earthers, have to feel special.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, that's a good question. Since cats and dogs are supposedly to be genetic cousins of the same tree, they should have a lot of similarities in biology, right?
I mean, they do. They manifestly do.
Yeah, they literally look kind of the same.
Dogs were closer to humans at 95% than cats were to dogs.
Okay, so I had to look into this one because it seemed really weird. And also, what is this he's showing us? Why isn't he showing us what this is, where it's from? He's done that before, right?
Uh-huh.
This is from an article from Psychology Today, which is not a journal. It's just a magazine about psychology. And this article is about allergies that dogs and humans can have when living in urban environments. And so I looked at this article and I was like, well, what is this summarizing? It was summarizing one paper that, again, was about allergies that dogs and humans share. And I couldn't find this claim about 95 to 90% just being... Actually, sorry. I could find it in that paper, which was weird because that's... Spoiler, it's not actually true. So I looked at where that claim was. So I looked at that source. And that source turned out to be a paper... just hit the wrong button. It turned out to be Initial Sequencing and Comparative Analysis of the Mouse Genome Sequencing by the Mouse Sequencing Consortium Genome, which was published in Nature. Okay. In that, they compared a number of different genomes to each other that they were sequencing, including dogs, humans, and mice. Nowhere in the paper does it say that mice and humans are more genetically similar. There's one way in which the paper indicates that dogs are more similar to humans than mice, and it is in the number of small sequence repeats. That probably doesn't mean anything to most people, so I will go ahead and explain what that means. So when your DNA is being copied, what happens is there's this protein complex that travels down the chain, and as it goes, it reads what's in the chain, and it spits out half of a DNA strand that is then conjoined to its opposite side, right? But sometimes it gets a little hung up, right? It's like, and it backs up a little bit and starts back over. So what that does is it means that there's a small part of the sequence that gets repeated. So it'll go like AAGCTA, whatever, and then it's like, oh, that A and that T, we're going to repeat it. So we'll go ATAT, whereas it didn't in the previous DNA copy. That's a small sequence repeat. Dogs and humans have a more similar number of small sequence repeats to each other than mice do to either. That's it. That's the entirety of the increased similarity between dogs and humans versus humans and mice. In all ways that people normally mean when they say that they're more similar, mice are significantly more similar to humans than dogs, which is what we would expect because humans and mice are both in the group Euarchontoglires, which excludes dogs and other carnivorans, which means they are more related. So, raw Matt is just wrong. Now, to be fair, he did get it from a website that's not him, but he didn't go back and check this.
Oh, of course not. He just cherry-picked a bit that he instantly thinks backs up his claim, and there we go, it's true because reasons.
Yep, that is it. So, yeah, but to be fair, I did have to go through at least 3 different steps to figure out what the heck was going on. But I actually know to do that because, 1, I can check sources, unlike, some people like Ramat. And 2, I also know that that's an absurd claim that needs to be checked on. Ramat, though, just sees a claim that agrees with him. He's like, yeah, sure, totally, I agree with that. Makes sense to me. Because he's a credulous when it comes to things that agree with him. And he has an absurdly high standard of evidence for things that don't agree with him.
Yeah,
which is a sign of pseudoscience.
It is flat earthers. Same again.
Mm-hmm.
Then they found cats were closer to humans than dogs were to cats as well.
No.
No, they didn't.
So what this isn't even actually saying that. Cats share 90% of our genes. That does not mean they actually have a 90% genetic similarity. What that means is that 90% of the genes, parts of the DNA that actually code for a protein, humans also have a gene for that protein, but it doesn't tell you how similar those are because proteins vary. Cat collagen isn't identical to human collagen. Cat hemoglobin isn't identical to human hemoglobin, and so on and so forth. If you want to actually say that cats are more similar or share 90% of human DNA, you'd actually check the nucleotide sequences. All that's saying is that it takes about as many of the same kinds of proteins to make a cat as it does to make a human. Which, yeah, cats have to live, they're both mammals, they live in the same world, they have to eat broadly similar food, they have the same basic metabolic processes, so of course they need about the same proteins. That's not a surprise to anyone, but that's not the same thing as saying that cats are more similar to humans than dogs are, or to mice, or anything like that. That's just saying that when you count up and name the proteins from cats and from humans, those lists are about 90% the same, but that's going to be true for basically all mammals.
Their common ancestry fell apart with observable, testable genetic data. This just proves how
their common ancestry fell apart. What does that even mean?
I don't know. I think he's saying that DNA testing has shown that the relatedness that we get from DNA sequencing isn't lining up with the morphological data, which is almost never true. It does happen occasionally, right? Like we had to change our bat phylogeny pretty significantly, and it turns out that edentata was not a real thing. It's actually a bunch of different things that just convergently evolved to look like each other. But for the most part, no, that's not a thing that happens. The DNA almost always strongly supports the character-based cladograms. So he's either making stuff up or he's lying.
lousy it is to rely on homology or taxonomy to answer any of the tough questions. In conclusion, at least they did say that the cat was very biologically unique, but
okay.
Look, they had to make excuses for finding such genetic discrepancy, such as, there must have been just too much domestication of the modern-day dog's genome, and not much of the cat's, to get this genetic similar match they were looking for.
I don't know who it is that said that. He didn't show that on screen.
No, he just created an argument that doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, that's, as near as I can tell, that's what happened, is he was just like, if I were someone who believed in science, what would I say if I thought this were true? And he came up with a dumb response to a dumb claim that no one's making.
This is their rescuing device for the disaster, which showed only a modest comparison between the two species of dog and cat.
By the way, whenever a creationist says rescue device, that's just creationism-ese for reason I'm wrong that I don't want to accept. That's all that means.
Fair enough.
Which were supposed to have more in common than all of the other species, which ended up having more, even though those other species, being the cow and human, were well outside of the cat's own taxa-clade species.
I'm just not going to show you that evidence, apparently.
Yeah, I'm just going to say things. Don't worry about me proving the things that I'm saying.
Yep.
Since they are supposedly a very close relative to one another? No. Frankly, I have no idea why they try to put these two together, because even taxonomically they are not the same. Cats are pure obligate carnivores, when raccoons are pure omnivores, and always have been.
What is a pure omnivore? What does that mean?
I think he's got confused with omnivore and herbivore.
Yeah, maybe. So here's the thing, right? nothing is a pure carnivore and nothing is a pure herbivore. Not even cats. Cats eat plants. You've probably seen your cat eat grass.
Yeah.
They don't get much from it. But they do it. And also, like, other things that you think of as pure carnivores. Do you know that crocodiles eat fruit?
I did actually. Yes.
Yeah, crocodiles eat fruit. Did you know that cows eat snakes?
I didn't know that, but good because I hate snakes.
Yeah, cows eat snakes. In fact, if you look at a ruminant like a cow or a deer or something, the females tend to eat a fair bit of meat when they're getting ready for pregnancy because they're stocking up on calcium. So they eat things with bones.
Right. Didn't know that.
So, yeah. So you can watch it, you can look and find deer and cow eating things like snakes or small birds or mice if they can catch them. There basically are no pure carnivores. And also, diet, except in very, very like low levels, like species, maybe genus, not usually taxonomically significant because things can change their diet. So basically, nothing is a pure anything when it comes to diet. And it's usually not very significant in terms of evolution anyway, except again, in relatively small cases.
It's the same with the skunk. Omnivores, not carnivorans. This also applies to the myocids, who are omnivores as well, which are considered the parent ancestor of all cat lineages. This is not true. Their entire physiology and internal anatomy are entirely different.
Okay, but they're not, though.
You can show us that?
Myocids are basically basal to both cats and dogs. And they share a lot of commonalities with both. Like, they're tree climbing and very lithe and have very flexible spines like cats. But they didn't have retractable claws, and they walked on their heels like most ancestral caniforms. In fact, the fact that dogs walk on their toes is unique to just dogs within the caniforms. Most caniforms actually walk on their heels, like raccoons and bears and otters and whatnot. They all walk on their heels.
Interesting.
And palms, yeah. So, like, meiosis is this perfect transition between these two groups, where it has like a tail and spine and to some degree a shoulder that's like a cat, but it has the feet and like the claws of a bear. Like, what do you do with that? Well, I know what to do with it because I know evolution is true. What does Matt do with it? I'm just like, nah, get it out of here. I don't want to talk about it.
So obviously, tossing these animals in via taxonomically, saying that they are all pure carnivora is bias.
And here is another area where Matt just doesn't know what he's talking about. So there's this order, Carnivora, which has the traditionally carnivore mammals in it. But he thinks that because it's called Carnivora, they must all be carnivores, or it doesn't make sense. But that's just not true. It's just the name of a taxon that's named for the tendency of the members. Pandas are almost completely herbivorous. They eat almost no meat. They're still in Carnivora because Matt doesn't understand that the etymology of a word doesn't necessarily tell you what it actually means now.
No.
That's just too far for him. Can't comprehend the idea that maybe the name was just chosen and it's essentially arbitrary and it doesn't actually matter if the members of that group are all actually carnivores.
It seems very much like a flat earther who does not understand context.
Yeah, like very basic ways that language works, and it's just right over his head.
They smuggle these animal species into carnivore taxa by using wordplay, altering the true meaning of carnivore, which should...
Imagine making this argument and accusing other people of the ones who are trying to do wordplay. His entire argument is just based on, these two words sound same. They must mean the same. I'm sorry.
I am actually blown away by the similarities between these people. It's just, if you're stupid, you're stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, are the Matts stupid.
Meat-eating organisms which derive their energy and nutrient requirements from a diet consisting mainly of animal tissue. That's right, taxonomy says carnivory is just incorporating vertebrate flesh into the diet.
No, that's not taxonomy. That's the dictionary. Taxonomy doesn't actually care that much. And carnivora isn't the same word as carnivore, and carnivoran isn't the same word as carnivore either. They're separate words for an important reason, because they don't mean the same thing.
This way, they can add something into carnivora if they need to without them ever being true carnivores or obligate carnivores. Basically, the only reason all these species made it into the carnivora group is because of their blade-like carnassial teeth.
That's actually right. That's a big part of it. That's a huge part of it. But Matt, that's the thing. It's a physical thing that they all share in common that we can trace through their fossil line all the way back to Miacids. And they've all seemed to have inherited this leaf-like shaped shearing teeth that even the herbivorous carnivorans like pandas still have. That's the whole point.
Basic anything seems beyond. It's just a mixture of ideas bundled with its own bias, without any actual connection between how these things back up his claim.
Yep. And in fact, many times they just contradict his claim, and he just doesn't notice. He just doesn't notice.
Which is odd to me, because now we know many bears and dog species today do not eat flesh of any kind.
Yeah, but they still have carnassials, Matt. That's the thing. And also, look, speaking of the teeth, you can see right here, you can actually count that on each side it has 3 incisors on that lower jaw, which is another feature of carnivorans that unites all of them.
So they assume relation mostly based on homologous teeth structure, even though everything else is vastly different. And
it's not vastly different. They have many other similarities. But teeth in mammals are very, very good at showing you relationships. Right? That's why we can differentiate the earliest horses and the earliest rhinos based on tooth shape.
Yeah.
Teeth in mammals are very distinctive. It doesn't work very well outside of mammals, but inside mammals, teeth are great. Teeth correlate very closely with both genetic relatedness and also just similarity of the rest of the body. If you have two mammals with very similar teeth, you almost certainly have 2 closely related animals.
Yeah.
In a case like bears, even that doesn't line up. That's right. True carnassial teeth do not develop in any bear.
Matt just showed us some carnassial teeth
in bears.
In a bear. Yeah.
I did notice that actually. Good job, Matt.
Yep. And then behind them were flattish grinding molars because bears eat a lot of plants. But yep, the carnassials are right there.
As far as Miacids are concerned, they as well don't have teeth that match up. They actually have molars and not incisors or carnassial for teeth like all cats have. So
yeah, first it's incisors, but Miacids have incisors, and they have canine teeth, and they have carnassials and molars, like all carnivorans. He just doesn't know the difference between these words, right? Like, he was focusing on bear molars while telling us they don't have carnassials. Well, okay, but molars aren't the same thing. Carnassials are modified premolars. So if you look at your own teeth, you've got 2 incisors, you've got 1 canine tooth, the next 2 are premolars, and then the next 2 are molars, and if you don't have your wisdom tooth removed, then the next one is also a molar. There are different kinds of teeth, and pretty much all mammals, with a few exceptions, have all of them, including Miacids, including carnivorans, and the carnassials are a common feature of all of the carnivorans. Sorry, yeah, carnassials are a common feature of all the carnivorans.
they're outside the cat family, and this is obvious based on their structure. Miacids have almost nothing in common with cats' external physiology either. Miacids have long, thin faces, as where cats have short, wide ones. Their bodies are long and skinny like a mongoose, which they have also smuggled into the Feliforma family.
Hey, remember that time that he pointed out that Proilurus looked a whole lot like a civet?
He did.
Which are another group of animals with long, thin faces? Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like he forgot that thing that he said at the very beginning. Mm-hmm.
To make common ancestry seem more true. Miacids have no retractable claws, as where all cats do.
Yeah, but that is a thing that is very unique among carnivorans. Most carnivorans don't have retractable claws. And that's why Miacis is a good transition, because it has some of the features of some of the caniforms and some of the filiforms without having all of the features of either. That's the point of evolution. Basically, what Raw Matt is saying is Miacis is so transitional that I don't think it can be a transitional fossil.
Evolution's putting a joke on us, though. It makes these fluffy, gorgeous kittens and then gives them those razor blades.
Yeah. Kitten claws are the sharpest. God damn.
They just go through your flesh, like... Whoosh.
Yeah, it's like they're just like they're just like lightsabers or something, just right through, no resistance. Ugh, kittens, man, they're adorable, but
deadly.
Myacids use smell, as where cats use vision. This is what
cats use smell, man.
Yeah.
Dogs are just better at it. Have you ever met a cat? The first thing it does is come up and sniff you.
Yes.
Like, has Matt just never met a cat? That might be what's happening. He might have just never actually physically interacted with a real cat in real life.
I'm pretty sure that my cat can smell cooked chicken from about 9 miles away.
Yeah, right? And yeah, it is true that cats are better with vision than dogs are, and dogs are better with smell than cats are. But, like, they're both better at smell than humans are, and cats are still very good at both.
the experts had to say on the subject. On one hand, Myacids used to live in packs. Other research
I've literally never heard anyone say that, but I guess I can't refute it, so whatever.
has shown that they form sex-specific groups like meerkats. Therefore, they're outside the cat family tree, based on characteristics as well.
Well, yeah, no one says that
meerkats. Does he think meerkats are cats?
No, he's trying to say that because he thinks that the social hierarchy of Myacids, which he has no idea on what it was, because I don't think he has any evidence about it. But he thinks that because it's more like meerkats, and meerkats aren't cats, that Myacids were also not cats. But no one has ever said that they are cats. Yeah, because if they're the common ancestor of all carnivorans, they can't be in any of the later groups that carnivorans evolved into.
The audience seems convinced he's never actually met a cat or doesn't know what a cat is.
I mean, based on the pictures that he's shown, which have included a lot of cats, I think he has at least a vague idea of what a cat is. But yeah, no, I don't think he's ever met one. It would be hard for him to make some of these claims if he's ever met a cat.
Yeah.
That's right. Myacids were also omnivores, as where cats, on the other hand, are pesky eaters and only carnivores. This is
again not technically true, but also again, most carnivorans are also omnivores. Cats are one of the odd groups that has hyper specialized into hyper carnivory, right? Where they get 90+% of all their calories directly from meat.
My cat likes
that is
cucumber.
Unique among. Oh, sorry?
My cat likes cucumber.
That's odd. I like cucumber though, and I'm a meat-eating dinosaur, so maybe it makes sense.
Yeah.
I had some cucumber gin and tonic last week. That was very, very nice. Just muddled the cucumbers in a glass with some gin in it, and then poured that gin back in to the rest of the gin. And yeah, well, I mean, I let it soak. Obviously, I let it soak for almost a day.
That sounds
and
amazing.
then yeah, it also works really well with rosemary. Get some fresh rosemary sprigs, drop that in a tall glass of gin, and then just pour that back into the rest of your gin, and you'll have rosemary gin. Excellent. It's mixology with Dapper.
Clive Wells says, in the jungle, the mighty jungle, the tiger sleeps tonight as lions inhabit the savannah and not the jungle.
It's true. There are some jungle lions in India, to be fair. There's a very small population of lions in a jungle in India. But yeah,
Right,
by and
so-
large.
Has anyone figured out what his top says yet in Klingon? It literally means I don't know.
It's so Lisa asks, Klingon is an SVO language? No, it is in fact the opposite. It is an OVS language, which is the rarest kind of language, which is why it is that, because the guy who made it was intending to make it as weird as possible, so that it seemed alien.
just another way that we can tell that Myacids are not related to cats at all.
That doesn't work at all. Like, think about this conclusion, right? If it were the case that you can't be related if you don't have different diets, all right, you can't be related if you have different diets. There we go. Then pandas couldn't be related to bears, because most bears are omnivores, whereas pandas eat almost no meat at all. Is there anyone out there who really doesn't think that pandas are related to other bears?
No. Plus,
Yeah.
I know a lot of vegans and vegetarians. We're the same species.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Myacids have nothing in common with cats' internal physiology as well, from intestinal length, salivatory pH, colon, body shape.
It's salivary, not salvatory. But that's okay. I don't think, Matt, that you have any data on the salivary anatomy or production of Myacids, because all we have are their fucking bones. Like, I don't know how he measured the length of the intestines of a meacid when they're all extinct and have been for millions of years. Where did he find those intestines? You can't run down to the shop and go to like the local butcher and say, "Oh, I know you're making some sausages with those meacid intestines. Can I have them?"
Must have borrowed the Jesuits' time machine again.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's convenient.
Yeah.
Although, you know, he really doesn't like Catholicism, so I'm surprised that they would get on so well.
Shape, etc., very little match down the line with any of these animals. No one would observationally look at a dog, cat.
Wait, did I say SOV for Klingon? I meant OVS, if that's what I...
No, you said OVS. You did say OVS.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Bear or skunk and presume that they were related at all. Also consider cats are observational and myacids were olfactory-based. So
basically what he means is when you take a cast of the brain of a meacid, it has a bigger olfactory bulb than it has a visual cortex.
And
I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. And I don't know what to do with that.
Cool story, bro.
Right. Like basically, he's saying because this animal isn't identical to the modern animals, they're not related. But the entire point of evolution is explaining how now different animals evolved from common ancestors. If they weren't different, then it wouldn't be evolution. If meacids were just cats, that wouldn't be evidence of evolution. So again, he's just saying, these transitional fossils are too darn transitional. Which doesn't help.
No.
they don't even match in that area. So why believe that myacids evolved into all these other species? Assumption and hypothesis.
Okay, so let's talk about what a transitional fossil is when we say that this is transitional between these groups, right? So what we mean is that it has some of the features that unite later groups while retaining some of the features of the ancestral groups that later groups have now lost. So for instance, if you're looking at like a fossil hominin, a human ancestor, you want to look at like, say, Australopithecus afarensis. Well, it has some of the features that modern humans have that other apes don't, like it walked upright. It had the hole where its spine attaches to its skull towards the bottom rather than the back of the skull. It had human-like arches, but not identical to arches in the foot. It had a wider pelvis. It had the iliac blades faced backwards instead of to the side like they do in most other apes. But it also had a very small brain case. It had larger canines than humans do. It had longer arms than modern humans do. And those are all things that are common in most apes that would have presumably been present in the ancestor of humans and other apes. So it has a collection of traits from the previous group as well as traits from the later group, but it doesn't have all of either, so it's a mix. Meiosis is a mix of carnivorous traits from both the later feliforms and the later caniforms, while also having some of the more basal, we don't have a good word for this, but like the not quite carnivorous mammals.
Right.
And all Matt is saying is, because it isn't exactly one of the modern groups, it doesn't count. But it couldn't be one of the other groups and still be in contention for being a representative of the ancestral state of the first carnivorans. So Matt is just displaying that he does not know the most basic aspects of how things like transitional fossils work.
But he's
all
debunking
really
it.
have to link common ancestry together.
Sorry?
He's debunking it, so, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean... stop assumptions. This is another thing that creationists and flat earthers share. They hate the word assumption.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that what assumption usually means in science is this is a conclusion from previous science that we don't want to do over.
Or
right?
It means something that it is an educated guess that you intend to test.
Right. Yeah. Those are the two big things, right? Well, you assume the truth of your hypothesis to test it so you can make predictions. And if your test has other assumptions in it, those are the conclusions of previous science. So, like, why do we get to assume gravity if we want to do something like test a bridge? Well, it's because people already figured out gravity a while back, and I don't want to have to sit here and rederive the gravitational constant just to build a bridge.
No, it's been done. So we've got that, thank you. But
move on.
The word assumption isn't the big scary thing, and it's kind of a foundation of science that you have to have an assumption to be able to test. And that's the entire point, is you're attempting to disprove your assumption.
Yep. They don't get that. They get neither the idea that assumptions are something you have to make to test a hypothesis, nor do they get the idea that we're allowed to bring in previous strong conclusions of science as assumptions in our test of our other assumed hypothesis. They don't get either of those things. They hate both of them.
As a matter of fact, since they also claim bears are in the same family, remember?
Nope, they're in the same order, Matt. Order is bigger than family. It's like all ducks are birds. That does not mean all birds are ducks. Bears are carnivorans. Dogs are carnivorans. Cats are carnivorans. But not all carnivorans are bears or dogs or cats. Some of them are one of those things. Some of them are none of those things and are other things instead. It's really like 5-year-olds could figure this out pretty easily. And Matt, just
no.
Can't do it. Like the most basic aspects of set theory, completely beyond him.
Well, multiple bears now has pulled the rug right out from under them, as they have all found to be fully fledged plant-eating vegetarians.
I'm sorry, he just showed a grizzly bear. Is Raw Matt claiming that grizzly bears don't eat meat?
I was a little confused by that. Pretty sure grizzly bears eat people.
Yeah, also polar bears are hyper carnivores, like cats are. And they get 90+% of their dietary intake from meat.
I didn't realize how big polar bears there were, by the way. Do you know
Oh my God, they're
on
gigantic.
all fours, they're as big as a human standing up. If a polar bear stands up on his back legs, it's almost 2.5 times as big as a human.
I have an uncle who used to live in the part of Alaska where it's illegal to go outside without a gun because the polar bears are actively hunting people.
I mean, they're actual monsters. I never realized how big a polar bear is. They're terrifying.
They're gigantic.
Yeah.
And they're also hyper carnivores. So
they will eat.
Matt is here apparently claiming that all bears are herbivores. When, I'm sorry, but no, all bears eat meat, even pandas, although they eat very little of it. And some bears are almost exclusively meat eaters, namely the polar bear.
As you can see, them trying to build their phylogenetic tree connecting all of these animals together is totally worthless. Stick to...
So I'm sorry, is Matt now arguing that bears aren't all related?
I think so.
Okay, so sure, Matt.
Genetics and follow it back. Stop assuming relation based primarily on homology. All they're doing is just digging themselves a bigger hole to get out of with all their biased assumptions that they need to be true. Cats are genetically breaking down as well, like all things. That's right.
Oh, yeah, he's talking about genetic entropy. This is this thing that some guy named John Sanford made up one day, and it's been demonstrated to be false by decades of experiment, and it already had been by the time he made it up. It's just not a thing, but creationists love it, so they keep going on about it. The basic idea is like this, right? You're more likely to have a slightly deleterious mutation than to have a beneficial mutation, which is true.
Yeah, makes sense.
And mutations build up in populations, which is also true. Therefore, overall, a population's genome is likely to become less and less fit over time as more of the mutations that build up will be negative, which is not true because of this little thing called natural selection. If a particular version of the genome gets to be unfit enough that actually affects reproductive output, that version of the genome will be selected against, and the versions of the genome that have the better fitness will then predominate again. So what will actually happen is that you will end up in a static environment with a long-term stasis in fitness, such that some lineages will in fact decrease in fitness, but they will be driven to extinction, and only the lucky lineages that don't have that will continue on. And that is a long-term sustainable thing. And you have to ignore things like that organisms have populations and aren't just a single individual asexually reproducing in order to believe in genetic entropy. You also have to ignore, and this gets more into the math behind it, so I don't want to get into it too much, but if you have crossover events where chromosomes switch bits, which we know happens, we already mentioned it today, that also removes this whole problem, because you can get what would otherwise be isolated beneficial mutations onto the same chromosome that they might not otherwise have been on, and therefore you can actually get organisms that have those beneficial mutations linked, and you can also break up deleterious mutations so that they can be eliminated more quickly, because of chromosomal crossover events. So basically, unless you ignore how populations actually work, genetic entropy just it doesn't work mathematically. Like, it's mathematically impossible. And when I say that, I mean, like, there are theorems about this, like mathematically proven theorems. Not even a science question. This is a math question. And the answer is no. We have proven it wrong mathematically. So yeah, it's very rare that I will say that anything in science is proven or disproven. This is one of those times. It has been mathematically demonstrated beyond any doubt, because it's math, that this doesn't work. This math doesn't math.
Mutations abound in the cat kind as well, with over 250 deleterious mutations that have been documented in domestic cats, including taillessness in Mannix cats, congenital...
Mannix cats, huh? Hey, there's this island that's somewhere off the coast of Great Britain. I think it's a little bit to the west, but like south of Ireland. What's it called? The Isle of Women? Nope, that's not it. The Isle of Man, that's it. And I think people and things from the Isle of Man are called Manx, right? Isn't that the demonym?
Yeah.
Okay, just double checking, because, you know, my geography is not that great. Yeah, it's Manx, not Mannix.
Brilliant.
It's not like there's an I in the word either. It's just a Manx. It's Manx. Come on. Also, Manx cats are doing just fine. I don't think it's that deleterious. You might not like it, but they seem to be okay with it. Because that's another thing. Raw Matt also shares that thing with Matt Powell, where he thinks that fitness is like the stuff you get at the gym. It's how awesome you are, according to Matt. So he thinks that anything that makes a cat less awesome in his eyes is deleterious, regardless of its effect on the reproductive output of that cat. But all evolution cares about is the reproductive output. So if it doesn't harm the reproductive output, it's not deleterious. And since Manx cats are doing just fine, it's evidently not deleterious.
Defects of white cats, twisted tail syndrome in the American ringtail cats, split foot syndrome in Japanese bobtail. The white tiger lacked the capacity to produce red and yellow pigments. This is all caused by a single point mutation in their gene.
I don't think all of those things were all caused by the single point mutation. So if that's what he was implying, then that's just clearly wrong. But like, whatever, it doesn't matter that much.
This is all just more evidence and proof of genomic decay, which is our model of creation, and not evolution and adaptation, like evolutionists want to tell us.
No, this is non-differentiating data, right? If both ideas that you're testing make a certain prediction, like deleterious mutations do exist, then you can't point to their existence as evidence of one or the other, right? It's like if your flat Earth model says that it should be, the sun should be directly overhead at 12:32 p.m. at this location in this city, and then the globe Earth also makes the exact same prediction. If all you do is step out at that time and look directly up, and that's where you see the sun, it doesn't help us, right? We can't use that particular observation to differentiate. And it's the same thing happening here. Both evolution and his nonsense genetic entropy, they both predict that deleterious mutations will occur. Therefore, just finding them is not on its own something you can use to argue either way. You have to look at things like, are the number of deleterious mutations, the prevalence of deleterious mutations increasing significantly over time? Are you accurately measuring the degree to which a mutation is deleterious? Or are you just kind of eyeballing it because that's what they're doing? Is this something that you actually see building up and causing decreasing fitness in populations that you're actually studying for fitness? I can tell you that one. The answer is no, because we actually have, both in the wild and in labs, populations that we've studied, and they don't all just decline in fitness. In fact, many of them increase in fitness for very long periods of time. So, yeah. Also, one of the ones they love to prove the genetic entropy is they'll say that, have you ever heard of the Lenski long-term E. coli experiment?
No.
This guy named Lenski is a scientist in the United States. He decided to do this experiment where he was going to culture a bunch of E. coli bacteria in these flasks where there was a very tightly controlled amount of nutrients versus non-nutritive, just like medium. And he was going to keep frozen samples of them so he could look back at the exact like ancestor descendants. Like he knew exactly like this frozen sample is ancestral to all of these flasks of bacteria that we've done. And this has been going on for decades. That's why it's called long-term, right? And the whole way through, he's been able to not he anymore. He's retired. His successors have been able to measure significant and sustained fitness increases in all lineages of the E. coli. In fact, in one group, they kind of stopped being E. coli because they started doing something that definitionally E. coli can't do. So, to some extent, they turned into a new species of bacteria. Whatever. But what the creationists will say was like, well, these groups had higher die-off rates. They had higher death rates than the previous groups. So that's genetic degradation. That's genetic entropy. Okay, but Craig, let's say you had two populations, one of which has 100,000 in it, and the other one of which has 10 billion. Which one do you think will record more deaths?
The one with 10 billion.
Yeah, that's all that's happening. They're so much more fit that there are so many more bacteria in the flask that, of course, a higher number of them die. How could they not? That's how populations work. And I'm not talking raw math. I am talking there are creationists with PhDs in genetics that make that mistake.
Things are not getting stronger, better, and more resistant. They're degrading and getting worse, and all of the evidence proves it.
Tell that to all the pests that are increasing their resistance to pesticides or antibiotics or whatnot.
Yeah.
No storytelling required. We creationists also have allele evidence as well to help us determine a created kind. We say the more rare the allele is, the more mutated.
The more rare the allele is... So, an allele, in case anyone doesn't know, is just a different version of a gene. So if we were to pretend that human eye color was just controlled by one gene, it's not, but let's just pretend. You have blue eyes, this person has brown eyes, that person has green eyes. That would mean you each have a different allele for the eye color gene. And I don't know how the rarity of an allele corresponds to mutation. Like, obviously the source of new alleles is mutations, because a mutation to a gene causes a new allele. That's what it is. But how does their rarity indicate anything?
The more common the allele, the more likely it was a created kind.
Okay, so normally when he says created kind, that means a group of organisms that, according to him, all share a common ancestry and were created as such by God. Which means that all created kinds should have multiple alleles, which means that alleles aren't created kinds, but he just said they were. I don't even know what he's trying to say here.
He's trying to cherry pick things that make him seem right without understanding any of the basic shit about which he is talking.
Yeah, I also think he's trying to use fancy words in ways that don't make sense to make himself sound smart.
Hey, Dapper, would you be up for a Young Earth Creationist conversation with Peter Markley?
Absolutely. I already have a bunch of those that I've had. They usually go fairly well. I'm a pretty nice guy. Just the other day, I had a conversation with an Old Earth creationist, Fuzz Al-Rana from Reasons to Believe, which is the biggest Old Earth creationist organization. I've had at least half a dozen conversations with my friend Jackson Wheat on his channel with Young Earth creationists. So yeah, absolutely. If Craig wants to set up a talk between me and a Young Earth creationist, I'm absolutely down for it.
Cool. I will get that sorted. Yes. All right, let me quickly catch up on Super Chats because I've had quite a few. Electric IPM for $2 Canadian says, Dapper, do you know the average lifespan of a dinosaur?
There isn't one average lifespan for a dinosaur. Dinosaurs would have lived different lengths of time. We know that T-Rex probably didn't live much past its second decade, but many sauropods could possibly even live into maybe a dozen decades. It's possible. Because by the time they became adults, they were basically just immune to anything that was going to kill them, except old age. But there's no one answer to that, right? Just like there isn't today. Like, how long does a bird live? Well, parrots can live for 80 years, but hummingbirds will live for a couple years. So
plus,
yeah,
the
there's
fact
no
that
answer
you've
to that,
lived for several million years throws the data off quite a lot. So
Well, yeah, there is that. I usually shouldn't be included in dinosaur longevity studies.
Janos Takos for 1,024 huffs says, I had a nightmare. An alien spaceship entered the solar system and blasted etherically displaced song on all frequencies and then just left. How did they get it?
I love how word salady that whole thing is. It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Only people that are in our community would understand that super chat.
Oh, yeah.
JSS Tiger, $5. Quote from Jurassic Park, Evolution. The evolution deniers are too preoccupied with whether they could spread their dirt, but didn't stop to think if they should.
Yeah, so weirdly, a lot of it is an attempt to get people to convert to Christianity, and I don't think it works very well. Look, if you watch this and you're someone who converted to Christianity because of creationists' talking points, let me know. I'd be very curious.
Lord Luna's Pooh for $2 says lions and tigers and kitty cats. Oh my. Icy Spin 199. Cain and Abel bred with Eve or imaginary sisters?
So there's a couple things. One is the harmonization that creationists and other literalist Christians try to do, which is usually that they'll say that because a later passage said that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters and doesn't bother to name any of them, that it was one of those daughters. I guess you could say Eve, but I've never heard anyone actually say that. But the actual more likely option is that the Cain and Abel story is actually from a different document than either the fall of Adam and Eve or Genesis 1. They're all actually from different authors. And chances are that the Cain and Abel story was written by an author who did not conceive of Adam and Eve as the first humans, but rather the first humans with which their God covenanted, which means that they were the ancestors of the author and his ethnic group, but not necessarily everyone else. And that Cain was just married to someone from some other group.
Right, okay. Genesis Tiger $5 says, I spotted a fully evolved flat earther one time on a hidden camera in the woods. Oh, did you see a bear do a shit or something? Annalise Knapp for $2.79 Canadian. My cat's watching and learning about how he evolved. Oh, I hope he's getting some good information.
I actually have reports from some of my my viewers that cats really like my channel. Maybe they just like my voice. I don't know.
Well, my cat is asleep down there, my old lady. She's 19 this year.
Wow. Was there another one?
No, that is all the super chats we've caught up. So get on with
Okay,
the dirt.
I'm going to hit play.
All evidence from existing cat hybrids and lineages, the fossil record evidence, and various other features including molecular sequencing data, genetics, pelage patterns, and unique virus sensitivities, all point to the feline cat family representing a single, clearly delineated basic type.
But that's the thing. No one disagrees. You haven't shown how you're differentiating them from other groups. That's the thing. Because all of those things also correspond to with other groups, right? Like, there are viruses that can only attack mammals, like rabies. Does that unite all of mammals? All mammals use the same basic chemistry for their hair coloring. Does that unite all mammals? All mammals have the same basic kinds of teeth, except for a few who've lost them, but they still have the genes to make them anyway. Does that unite all mammals? And his answer in each of these cases is going to be no. But it's the same technique that he uses to unite all cats. And that just does not compute for him. He does not realize that the same way that he says that all cats are related is exactly how everyone else says that all mammals and all animals and all organisms are related.
Or he knows what he's doing and he's just lying.
Well, yeah, there's that possibility too. Although I do think he is stupid enough to not notice. Matt, so Raw Matt is definitely one of the ones who I think is more stupid than dishonest. I do think he's both, but I think he's weighted more heavily in the stupid section than the dishonest section.
It is reasonable then, with all the evidence available, to say that all these felines arose from a single basal-founded cat, and since then, they have passed through one or more adaptive radiations and speciations, exploiting their inherent morphogenetic potential to produce...
Ooh, morphogenetic potential? Those are some, like,
words.
$12 words right there. Wow.
I bet he didn't do that in the first take.
Well, yeah, probably not. But he actually, like, those are reasonable words to use there, so...
all the known existing and extinct species of cat. Thus, it is reasonable and logical for us as creationists to assume that there was a single cat that was a created kind, because all of the evidence clearly shows this to be true. Now, could something prior to the Proaleras given rise to it? Sure, why not? But the fact remains, no genetic data, or any data for that matter, solidifies that opinion.
I mean, none of it does for Proaleras either, because, again, we don't have genetic data. But also, remember, the whole point of the Phylogeny Challenge was to show where the commonality stops. All he's done is shown where he thinks it is, which doesn't help. Well, so what he needs to do is go find, like, what about civets? What about nimravids? Why don't you think they have common ancestry? It hasn't even approached it.
Yeah, no.
Proaleras is the first cat, the first of its created kind, and it populated the entire world we see today. That is what the evidence shows, and that is what we say. The Phylogeny Challenge has been answered.
It hasn't. It hasn't even been attempted.
You've just said some things that didn't even...
The thing is, even if he was right about everything, it still didn't even attempt to address it.
Can I attempt
because
to
the whole point
give like a quick breakdown of his entire answer is, we don't know a couple of things, and these things are similar, therefore God made them.
Yep. And therefore they're not related to other things that God might have made too. Which is that's the part that works the least well. Which is also the only important part. The whole point of the challenge.
But what about nymphorids?
Yeah, that's a good question. What about them?
Which are a genius of extinct scimitar or saber-toothed cats only found in...
No, that's the thing. They're not cats, though. And the thing is, what differentiates them from cats is the structure of their inner ear. That's it.
Oh, didn't know that.
What about that inner ear structure means that they couldn't be related? Because they're not cats. And if you say they are related, then I'm just going to point out that what unites them is not much more significant than what unites civets and cats. And that what unites civets and cats isn't that much more significant than what unites cats and civets as a group to dogs and bears as a group. It keeps working.
North America are considered not part of the cat order. What?
It's a family. Like, I'm pretty sure that you were taught in school, Craig, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so class and family are different levels, and order and families are not the same level. It's like class, order, family. But he's like the cat class, like, or the cat order. No, cats are a family.
It's just
a family.
Using the words in different places, just like flat earthers, they will take words out of context they don't understand, don't know where they're supposed to go, and just use them to try and sound clever.
Yep.
Well, I am confident that they are wrong on this assumption that nivorids do not belong to the cat order.
Based on?
He said so.
The difference between
and now they're in order. They were a class. They're actually a family, but then they were a class, and now they're in order. Sure, whatever.
Nivorids in the feline order display only minute skeletal differences.
Feline is a subfamily. So he's doubling down on just not knowing what any of these words mean. Feline is a subfamily. Felidae, felids, that's a family. The order is Carnivora. The class is Mammalia. So if you want to specify your kitty, right? Your domesticated cat. Kingdom Animalia. Phylum Chordata. Then we get to class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Felidae, subfamily Felinae, that's why they're felines, not just felids. Then it's genus Felis, species Sylvestris, subspecies Catus. That is the whole taxonomy for a little kitty cat. Raw Matt thinks you can just take any of those names and swap where they go, and it's just fine.
Indistinguishable in almost every area. This is why there was such a dispute. But calling an extinct cat a non-cat that is otherwise clearly a cat, simply for classification purposes and based solely on ossification bones in their ear, seems excessive and outright dishonest.
Why?
Because he said so. Again, he said the thing. Okay. It has to be true.
Yeah. Basically, here's what it comes down to. Creationists actually have this thing that the fancier ones call the cognitum, which is basically just Latin for like a thing you think. And what they do is they'll look at organisms and they'll say, those look similar enough that I think they're related. Those don't. And that's it. That's how deep it goes. So Answers in Genesis, which is probably the biggest creationist organization, they will split apart sheep and goats on one side and cattle on the other side, even though they're in the same family. And their reason is because people kind of think of them differently. So we don't think they're related. That's it. That's the entirety of it. Most times, the family, because they're in the same family, they're in the family Bovidae, right? Most people, or most of the time, they think that the kind is at the family level. So there's a common ancestor for all cats in Felidae. There's a common ancestor for all dogs in Canidae. There's a common ancestor of all bears in Ursidae, all weasels and whatnot in Mustelidae, and so on and so forth. But when they get to Bovidae, they're like, yeah, but people don't think of sheep and goats as being the same as cows, so now they're not related at all. And they call it the cognitum to make it sound fancy. It's literally just like, meh, it doesn't pass the vibe test. Okay. So for Raw Matt, these animals that aren't cats pass the vibe test, but civets just kind of don't. Maybe, I don't know.
For some reason.
Why do they do this? Well, because it doesn't match up with their phylogenetic tree that they made.
No, it does. Okay, look. That puts these animals as basal to Proilurus, right? The thing is, this is also another thing that creationists always get wrong. Where we put the family is ultimately arbitrary, right? Family doesn't actually mean anything, right? So a genus is a collection of similar species. How similar? Whatever. A family is a collection of similar genera. How similar? Whatever. A class is a combination of similar families. How similar? Again, whatever. If you switch where on this chart you put the family line, it doesn't actually change anything about the chart. And what this means is that people said, okay, here's how we define Felidae as a family. Oh, this group of very similar animals doesn't quite meet the definition, so we leave the family mark here on the chart, and they just come right before it and up to the side. That's all that's happening. If we had defined family differently, then yeah, they would be in the cat family. But they're not. Again, granted, because of our arbitrary definitions, but what's arbitrary is the labels that we put on these lines, right? So on every horizontal line, you could put a name. And which name goes where is just up to humans. But the shape of the chart isn't. The shape of the chart is the objective thing, right? It's sort of like if you look at like your family tree, which is a similar concept, right? You can see your ancestors and you and how you're related to everyone. What Raw Matt is saying is, I don't like where the family name, like pick your family name Smith or whatever, started. I think it should have started earlier. Okay, who cares? It doesn't mean anything. If you want to say that you think that the name Felidae should be a step back, I can't tell you you're wrong. But what I can tell you is that's not where it is. And putting these animals in that group doesn't make that change. And it doesn't help or hurt you. You're just complaining about the arbitrary aspect of taxonomy. But it does not get rid of the actual relationships. What actually matters are the lineages. And we know that, say, saber-toothed tigers and regular tigers are more closely related to each other than any of them are to the Nimravids. Okay, great. So they're not the same family because we just arbitrarily decided that. But because creationists have decided the arbitrary label of family is where they want to put their objective kinds, that creates problems for them. Because they are trying to make something that is ultimately arbitrary, just where we stick a signpost, and turn that into a fundamental aspect of reality. But you can't do that because it's not. And that's part of the problem they're having. It's like, what's a family? Well, for creationists, it tends to be like the actual things that God made separately. They're completely different from each other, not related at all. But it's an arbitrary classification, so it can't be that.
So see how biased they are? If they need something to work, they will just make it up and place it where they want, regardless. Yet when it doesn't match up, they ignore it entirely. Nymphorids were like lions and tigers today. DNA has proven that yes, they were cats.
I have not heard any reports of Nimravid DNA, but okay, sure. He seems to just like make up like DNA evidence that doesn't seem to exist.
Yeah.
What happened is that they speciated from the basal ancestor branch and died off because of extinction. Most people do not realize.
Died off because of extinction. That's like saying I died to death.
I was about
I
to
died
say,
because of
like,
death.
Yeah. We were extincted to death.
Yeah, my house burned down because of fire. Like, yep, that's generally how it works. The plane fell because of gravity. Technically, yes.
That's how easy it is for carnivores to die off. And since we're dealing with the cat species that transition to pure obligate carnivores, and carnivores are very susceptible to extinction, then we can see why there are so many extinct cats back in the fossil record.
He is actually, interestingly enough, right that hypercarnivores are pretty susceptible to extinction. They rely very heavily on their prey species, and if anything disrupts the availability of their prey animals, they are subject to extinction. So yeah, he's interestingly enough right about that. And it's an interesting pattern that you can see in the fossil record. Animals at the top of the food chain, the hypercarnivorous, like super predator type things, they come and go all the time.
And we do see this even in many cat species alive today, which have died out via extinction, because they...
Many
Died
cat
out
species
via
alive today
extinction.
which have died out because of extinction. Matt, do you know
Wait,
what any of those words mean?
Cat species that are alive today that have died out because of extinction. Is that the sentence that he just said?
Yep. Yes, it is. Yep.
Are carnivorous and ran out of food sources and pervasive selection from hyperdietary specialization. It is proven that hypercarnivory.
I don't think that's a cat, but what do I know?
No, I don't even think that's a real creature. I think that's like from some waxwork museum or something.
Actually, so looking at the patterns, where you see how it's getting more prominent stripes as it goes towards the back of the animal.
Yeah,
I think that's actually a badly taxidermied Tasmanian wolf or thylacine.
It just doesn't look real, does it?
No, it's clearly bad taxidermy, but I think it actually might be a Tasmanian wolf, which are now extinct. But yeah, I'm pretty darn sure that's not a cat.
When there's a phone number that's calling me that's clearly spam, I always answer it. Fred's taxidermy. You snuff 'em, we stuff 'em.
I actually started answering some spam texts in Klingon. I like to see how long they persist until they realize I'm just not going to answer in English. But to be fair, the Klingon usually makes sense in context. So if they can read Klingon, they can actually try to scam me.
When I get a scam text, I like to reply just the same thing that the text has sent me to see if it's a bot. If it says something like "Hi, where are you?" and then you respond "Hi, where are you?" and then it like just continues on the script and you just keep saying the same thing back to it, but it's still like it's like that's a bot. But if it's like, "Why are you saying this?" You're an actual scammer. Okay.
Yeah, I have at least a little bit more respect for the actual humans because at least you're trying.
Yeah.
You're giving it a go. You're not just letting a robot do it for you.
Extinction, even wear and cracking on their carnassial teeth.
That's a canine, not a carnassial. Like, it doesn't matter much, right? Because it's just an illustration of, like, what he's talking about. But, like, you could get that right. You could just find a picture of a damaged carnassial from this looks like a tiger. But instead, it's a cracked canine. Like, why? Why do you have to get everything so wrong? The most basic shit. Which tooth you're talking about? That's a canine. Look medially. You can see the 3 sets of incisors on one side. Like, ugh.
May result in the death of the individual due to starvation. Carnassial teeth infection are common in domestic dogs and present as abscesses.
That is not a carnassial. That is the dog's face. That is not the inside of its jaw, my friend.
That's like a hole in the dog's face, not an abscess in the...
So to be fair, now we know for certain that he doesn't know what a carnassial is, which is why when he was talking about bear carnassials, he was focusing in on their molars.
Well, I'm more concerned he doesn't seem to know the difference between the inside and the outside of an animal.
Yeah, that is a problem. I hope he doesn't have any pets.
As for the ecological niche of large carnivores, these animals typically make up only a small part of the ecological
Look, here in the States, I've even heard professional biologists say it niche. I'm not going to nitpick them on that one.
diversity of any given area. This fact directly relating to 1. The availability of food and success rate involved in catching something, and 2. Territorially. If predators equaled or outnumbered their prey, while also having to contend with disease, injury, and other factors of mortality, the ecosystem would not be sustainable. Carnivores would eat themselves out of house and home, literally. Likewise, given the fact that carnivores do not migrate with herds, rather hold down territories, there is only
that varies, but sure, whatever.
so much room in a given area for carnivores of a particular species to exist.
To be fair, pretty much all carnivorans, like the actual mammal order, I'm pretty sure basically all of them except like the aquatic ones maintain territories. So whatever, I'll give it to them.
Given this observation, it is often strange when we come across mass assemblages of carnivores in the fossil record. To me, this is more proof that Noah's flood helped these things form.
Oh my god, I'm gonna sip some of this. This doesn't even have alcohol, but I'm gonna pretend it does. Okay, so there's this thing called a predator trap. A predator trap is a deadly situation like a
Mike
tar.
Hansen used to do. Chris Hansen.
What's that?
Trap. Is that?
What's that?
No, sorry, that's a different kind of predator trap. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's that kind of predator trap. This is for wild animals, not for human predators. So what happens is which by the way, the things he's showing us aren't predators. Those are ceratopsian dinosaurs, which weren't predatory, but whatever. Predator traps happen when there's some aspect of the landscape that is deadly to whatever goes in there. It might be that there's been a volcanic eruption, and now there's toxic gas that's denser than air, so it's sticking around in some valley or something. Or it could be like a tar pit. Could even be quicksand, right? Where animals wander in, they die, and it's hard to get out once you get in. That attracts predators, because all predators will scavenge if they have the opportunity, right? The idea that like there's scavengers and predators as separate categories is basically a myth. Some animals are more willing to hunt down prey than others, but all predators will scavenge if they come across a really reasonably fresh corpse. So some herbivores or even some carnivores wander into this death trap, and that attracts specifically carnivores, because herbivores tend not to scavenge, mostly because they know that carnivores are better at it and will push them away from the corpse, even if they would like to eat it. So what happens is, we'll use the La Brea tar pits. That's a famous example. It's almost all direwolf bones in there. Direwolves make up a huge proportion of the fossils in the La Brea tar pits. We also have a few other animals, but it's almost all direwolves. And that's because once an herbivore or another direwolf gets stuck in the tar pit, it's going to die in there. It can't get out. Yeah. But that attracts more direwolves, and that's all that's happening. The problem is that the flood actually doesn't explain this, because the flood, being global in extent, means that there should be no real preference by locality for carnivores versus herbivores. And all the carnivores should be represented in about the same proportion as they existed in the environment. Whereas in predator traps, the carnivores vastly outnumber herbivores, which is weird because that doesn't happen in real life. Because in real life, you don't get as many calories out of eating an animal as that animal actually has stored in it as chemical energy, because your digestion isn't 100% efficient, which means that the biomass of predators has to be smaller than the biomass of herbivores. It's that's just physics, right? The energy balance doesn't work any other way. And so these predator traps, far from confirming the flood, one, usually can't have formed in floods, right? Like, we know that tar pits aren't what floods make, right? You don't get a flood and suddenly there's tar everywhere. That's not how it works. So we know that most of these predator traps weren't formed by floodwaters. And they don't actually make sense in terms of what we would expect a flood to show us in a fossil record. Because when we do have flood deposits, which are in the fossil record, they don't show a predominance for predators.
As massive dinosaur graveyards. Besides, observation and logic tells us that this is not how animals behave in the world we see today. So,
I mean, it is in predator traps. Yeah. That's the thing. It is in predator traps. Those still exist. We still see them.
Why assume that such a large number of predators?
By the way, this is Dinosaur National Monument in the United States. It's pretty cool. I don't remember exactly what caused the dinosaur die-off, but there's a large number of sauropod fossils. You can see people working there. This guy is standing on a dinosaur leg. You can see a bunch of sauropod vertebrae around. Cool. But basically, it was a big fossil bed. It got uplifted so that it's almost vertical, and it's now roped off and put inside a building that you can go see. It's run by the federal government here in the United States. And so if you're ever stateside and you want to see some fossils, Dinosaur National Monument, great place to go.
Congregated back then. Think about it. If the group doesn't seem to be a family or a social group, why were they together?
By the way, this is a snow leopard, which is actually not closely related to any other cats. It's its own weird little group. It's not closely related to leopards. It's just called that because it has a similar spot pattern. And it also has proportionally the longest tail by far of any cat.
Cool. The Bible has no documentation on what any of the created kinds were. So we have to...
Well, except for humans, I suppose.
Using as much genetics as possible, and even the fossil record, unfortunately.
Yeah, but when you do the genetics, you find that humans are more close to apes, well, chimpanzees specifically, than tigers are to lions. So, oops.
And this is really tough, because almost all life was wiped out because of Noah's flood. The Bible is vague on the topic of created kinds because it is not a salvational topic, nor one that needed much attention. The word kind is actually...
Here's a fun fact. The idea of salvation wasn't actually really a thing back when Genesis was being written. No. The idea when Genesis was written was basically that salvation was just a temporal thing that might happen politically or in terms of military, but there was no idea of you could be saved from the bad afterlife. The idea at the time was that everyone dies, they go down to the grave, where they're kind of semi-conscious, and their level of consciousness kind of correlates to how well remembered they are. And that's about it. That happens to everyone.
Used to describe many different things. Kind, a large group, are called animal kind. Then it is used again with bird kind. Then it becomes more specific with the hawk kind. So it's far too vague to give a specific definition.
So the Hebrew word underlying this word kind is mean, mem yod nun. And it means what kind normally means in English, which is just a group of similar things that's context dependent, right? So if you say, oh, I like this kind of food, you might mean Indian food. You might mean specifically this particular type of curry. You might mean specifically this group of vegetables in this specific type of curry with this particular kind of naan that you're eating it with. Or you might just mean vegetables and spicy sauce generally from any part of the world, right? What matters is the context, and that's how the Bible works too. The word mean in Hebrew is just like the word kind in English. It doesn't mean anything in particular. It's just context dependent. So when it says bird kind, what it means is all the birds. Yeah. When it says hawk kind, it means all the hawks.
When it means moron
and that's
kind, it means all the Flerfs and all the younger creationists.
Exactly. It's not a scientific or a technical term, and it never was. But creationists use it that way. And it's weird because no one writing the Bible would have used it this way. They would have been baffled by the idea that this was some kind of technical term. Because remember, the ancients had technical terms because while they weren't as knowledgeable scientifically about as we are, they had specialized professions like architecture and carpentry, metallurgy, and all these things. And they had their own technical terms for things that they encountered in those jobs. Kind isn't one of them.
People should understand that it is an umbrella term, like mankind. Would you not classify a midget or an albino or a mongoloid part of mankind?
Why did he show a Down syndrome person and say mongoloid?
Because he's a horrible, horrible human being.
I kind of want to slap him.
Yeah, me too. I kind of forgot that was in here.
Of course you would. The Hebrew word is where the attention should be, not the English word kind. Original word in the Strong's Concordance is that of min.
Anytime someone is using the Strong's Concordance, it is a red flag that they do not know what they're talking about. Strong's Concordance, at most, just gives you where a certain word is used. It is basically useless. There are much better concordances, and there are much better lexicons. There's no good reason to use Strong's Concordance, ever, for anything. Just don't do it. It is the sign that you are not really knowing what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Like in minute. It is from an unused root word to portion out, or to sort kind, species, a part of a whole, an amount, a section, or a piece of something.
So he's just showing us that the word mean in Hebrew isn't a technical term, even though he's going to use kind that way. Okay, cool. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for showing that I'm right, that you're being stupid for using this word as a technical word.
Yeah, just literally pointing out that you're a fucking idiot. Good job!
Mm-hmm.
So this would mean that kind is a mixture between subspecies and order, and more specifically...
No, Matt, it means it's a general term for a bunch of things that are kind of similar that is context dependent. How?
Why is context so hard for these people?
It's because they barely think. Their brains just don't bother. That's all I can come up with.
Register on like an ECG, would they?
It's literally the same thing as like, well, it says that level means flat here. It's like, did you read two definitions down and think that maybe that's the context I mean? No. It says this one here, so that's what I'm going to go with. Okay.
Near the family.
I think the Tree of Life is an artifact of...
this is, by the way, his video. This is his cut. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Some early scientific studies that aren't really holding up. So the tree, there may be a bush of...
Actually, wait, that might have been my cut, because this might be the other Matt Powell video. So, okay. Right. If this goes to Matt Powell, it was my cut. So my apologies if that's the case. I don't remember.
I don't like that word.
Okay, so what this guy is talking about is the fact that there's this thing called horizontal gene transfer. So normally what we talk about is vertical gene transfer. That's transfer from parent to offspring and so on, right? So you vertically got your parents' genes. That's vertical. But if another organism that isn't ancestrally related to you somehow gets its genes into your genome, that is horizontal. So this does happen. It even happens in humans. Humans have a number of what are called endogenous retroviruses, which are bits of viral DNA that are incorporated into the human genome. Those are transferred, obviously, from viruses, and no one has a virus as their dad or their mom, so that means that they were transferred in horizontally. Well, okay, maybe. So at the very
Hey guys,
basic
you want to hear a
base,
funny story? While we're all
Yes, we were
chatting?
talking about
I'm
you.
dating a first grader.
Sorry.
So at the very base, like where we're talking about like, different groups of like archaeans and prokaryotes, there's a lot of horizontal gene transfer that was happening. And we know that organisms like this have a lot of mechanisms for horizontal gene transfer. And so what that results in is it's hard to get ancestor-descendant relationships as cleanly down at the very base of the tree of life as it is at higher levels, where horizontal gene transfer is more rare. And so that's what people mean when they say that at the bottom of the tree is kind of bushy. It's because there's a lot of crossing over. But the problem is that that doesn't negate the common ancestry part. The fact that like some portion of this bacterium's genome came from this archaean genome doesn't negate the fact that they have common ancestors. It just becomes hard to draw a nice clean tree because of the horizontal gene transfer. That's it. That's all that's being said here.
Right, before you continue,
I can see that.
I really need to do a Riley, so I'm going to quickly play a song saying how dumb Wits it is. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
I will get a new icy drink.
What is a full moon and what is a new moon on your model?
Probably like a magnetic cycle and just like the center of a barrel cell image of a magnet.
Just like the center of a Flerfs cell spiral. Image of a magnet, it's just black in the middle. It's actually pure inertia, not just a little. In the Flerfs cell image of a magnet, it actually goes into its inertial state, then charges back up. It becomes like etherically displaced. Yeah, you start to see it charge up once more, and it goes back like it did before. Once it becomes like etherically spaced, you see it charge up and take its place. Oh, shucks, ain't that so? That's how moon phases work, fam. Pass the dresser. In the magnet's heart, centrifugal divergence flies. Centripetal convergence pulls. Defying all science, etheric whispers sing. Light and shadow blend, magnetic cycles spin, where physics seems to end. In the Flerfs cell image of a magnet, it actually goes into its inertial state, then charges back up. It becomes like etherically displaced. Yeehaw! Grab your partner, swing around, magnetic cycles up and down. Either song in the air, hillbilly science everywhere, cause it's like etherically displaced. Yeehaw! Belly on up to the Wixit word salad buffet. Who has light vinaigrette? It's behind the Jugger Ranch.
Then charges back up, and once it becomes like etherically displaced again.
He's a bloody genius, that guy.
The degree to which none of that actually means anything is still astounding to me.
I know.
It would be hard for me to come up with something that means so little.
Have you heard? You've heard "No Dirt in Middle" by Demok, right?
Yes, yeah. There's just a transcript of one of his texts that's just complete. It's not even sentences.
No,
it's just random ass words that just fly around.
I tried to get ChatGPT to dissect it, and she was like, "Stop! No, go away, Craig."
I'll give Wits at this. At least his sentences have the grammatical form of sentence.
Yeah.
Demok, it's just words. All right. Should we hit play, or you got any super chats or anything you want to go through?
No, we're good right now. We've got another 3 minutes of this, and we can check on our poll.
Yeah. So there is not a tree of life, and in fact, from our deep sequencing of organisms in the ocean, out of now we have about 60 million different unique gene sets. We found 12 that look like a very, very deep branching, perhaps fourth domain of life.
Squids and octopuses have a different genetic build than any other creature in the world.
That is just not true. In fact, when squid and octopi and cuttlefish and whatnot were genetically sequenced, they line up just with the mollusks. as was expected. They're just mollusks.
I mean, they do seem
scientists have
alien,
come.
right? If there's anything on this world that you could consider alien-like, it's like it's an octopus, right?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, in point of fact, genetically, they line up perfectly well with mollusks.
The conclusion that they couldn't have come from any other sea creature. So,
I mean, except for, mollusks.
So here's what evolutionary theory states about how they got here. Evolution says, or evolutionists claim, it says one plausible explanation, in our view, is that the genes are likely new extraterrestrial imports to Earth.
Okay, so he is currently reading from a paper that was written by some of the associates of Fred Hoyle. I don't know if you know who Fred Hoyle was.
Yeah, I have. Heard,
But yeah, so he was a British astronomer and cosmophysicist and astrophysicist, right? He, interestingly enough, came up with what we now accept as the basic way that higher or heavier elements are created in stars, right? His stellar nucleosynthesis idea is now the standard model all the way up to certain level after which we have other ideas as to how they form like supernovae and whatnot. But Fred Hoyle was famously an anti-evolutionist. He was a weird guy because he was both an atheist and he hated evolution. It's a very rare combination, but what are you going to do? And this paper was written by some buddies of him. Now, Fred Hoyle thought that life spread around the universe through space, and basically life forms would just land on planets that were suitable to life and then proliferate. That was his idea. And this paper is by some of his buddies. Now, it did get published, but by calling them evolutionists and implying that these are people who accept evolution, Matt's just lying. These are people who are anti-evolution. They do occasionally manage to get published, but almost immediately after this paper was published, numerous refutations were written and published, and the journal apologized for publishing it in the first place.
That's always good.
This is not
Look, guys,
the consensus view
science.
of evolution. Yeah.
These scientists declare that, quote, the squid eggs hitched a ride.
So there he's not reading from the paper. He is reading from a Pop Sci article. I don't know which one, because I've read the paper, and they actually say that what they think happened was that viruses hitched a ride on an asteroid, and that the viruses infected some mollusks, which then resulted in the development of the very unusual cephalopods, like squid and octopus.
Yeah.
So he's
so
again,
there was no
just
squid
using
eggs on a meteor in this claim.
Right. Yeah. So he's reading a Pop Sci article and then just taking that at face value, which I guess is slightly better than just reading the headline like he did with the dinosaur farts. But like, again, don't just take the headline of a Pop Sci article at face value. Check the original paper and check to see if that paper has actually had an effect on the field. Because sometimes a paper gets published and it's wrong and no one really cares. Yeah. In fact, sometimes even idiots like me can figure out that a paper is wrong. So there was at least one paper that I publicly disagreed with, and it was later retracted. So I win on that one.
To Earth on the back of asteroids.
No, it was on the front of asteroids.
It was on the side.
Yeah. Was it on the left or the right side?
That is what evolution teaches, folks.
What you got to remember, when he says that is what evolution teaches, what he usually means is, that's what I read from a Pop Sci article that misrepresented what a fringe paper said.
Yeah.
I am not kidding. I was in an interview with a friend of mine who's got it.
It's true, you're not kidding. He's lying, which is different from kidding, because kidding is when you lie with no expectation of being believed. But you're just regular
He's trying
lying,
to
where you
deceive
expect
people purposefully.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's true. Matt wasn't kidding. He was lying. Or he's just super stupid. I mean, that's a possibility.
He's an actual creation scientist. Now, him and I don't see eye to eye on everything.
Being an actual creation scientist is the same as being an actual flat earth cartographer.
But he brought this up, and I thought he was joking with me. I said, are you serious? We cut for a moment. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is what they teach? He said, yeah, it's what they teach. I looked it up.
I'm glad he got it from a different idiot. They just spread the idiocy around like herpes.
Sure enough, evolution teaches that they hitched a ride on the back of asteroids. Doesn't that sound fun? And
no, actually, it sounds terrible.
Yeah, no air, endless darkness. Cold.
Alternately cooking versus freezing.
Yeah, possible explosions on the rock from pressure building up. Yeah, no, it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And who knows, bloody fucking Bruce Willis might turn up with a drill and try to just blow up your home. Sounds crap.
I'll stick with the Lexington, where it's nice and warm and cozy.
Yes, my ship will always have working life support.
Fridays, 6 p.m. Pacific, top hats off. Check it out.
They don't get along anyways. Squids and octopuses are constantly fighting each other, so I don't know how they made it here to begin with.
I have no idea what he's talking about there. Squid and octopus don't tend to live in the same places. Squid tend to be like organisms that live free swimming in the water column, whereas octopus tend to live at the bottom. They don't tend to eat exactly the same food. So I have no idea where he's getting this, that like squid and octopus are like mortal enemies who hate each other. I think he's just imagining it, or maybe it was on a TV show he watched.
I'm pretty sure it's a SpongeBob episode.
Maybe that's it. Maybe he's confusing SpongeBob with real life. Because, if there's one thing that organisms under the ocean like to do, it's go to the beach that's under the water. That's real.
But of course they were eggs, and the article goes on to say that they were fertilized. They don't know how, but they were fertilized.
Well, you see, when a mommy squid and a daddy squid
when they
love
really
each other very
other,
much,
and the lights
the
go
daddy
off.
squid will detach his penis and it will swim over to the mommy
hold
squid.
on. Wait, what? That's not... When I was told the birds and the bees, I'm supposed to take it off?
No, because you're a mammal. You can do it the other way.
Right.
You can leave it attached.
So I don't...
I was actually
just to be clear, I want to be absolutely 100% clear here, I don't need to detach my penis.
You don't need to. You can if you want to.
I mean, I'm up for new experiences, but...
Hey, you'll never know if you don't try. I was actually asked once if it grows back, and it's like, no. The male dies. That's it. The female will die, but it'll just take the water. So yeah, the penis swims over, and then it releases its sperm. And then there you go. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Wow.
So that they could hatch when they hit the water. Evolutionists also claim that because monkeys had to have somehow gotten to South America from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That's what evolutionary theory states, and they have a problem figuring out how. So their best conclusion that their best scientists have come up with is this idea that monkeys surfed.
Once again, this is just him not understanding that this is just a cheeky reference to rafting,
yes,
which is just animals clinging onto plant debris. And for some reason, that is just, he just can't get that. But the weird thing is, that's also usually a standard explanation as to how animals got to where they live now after Noah's flood. Because remember, in the flood story, Noah lands somewhere in like the Middle East.
With all of the animals.
With all of the animals except maybe like the fish. And okay, maybe you can explain the birds because they can fly, sure. But basically all of like the reptiles and the mammals have a problem. They can't get to places like North America or Australia or South America, right? Unless they go across the ocean. Now, the people who wrote Genesis didn't know that Australia or the Americas existed. So for them, the world was literally just like North Africa, like parts of the Middle and Near East, and like the eastern parts of Europe. That's all they knew about. So for them, the idea that all the animals in the world could get off the ark and then go repopulate the world they knew of that seemed plausible. They didn't know how many animals there were. They didn't know how big the world was. They didn't know just how much ocean there was between different landmasses. They didn't know any of this. So for them, okay, big flood happens, and then the animals get off the boat, and then they just walk to where they need to go. No big deal. But for creationists, it is a big deal. And one of the ways that they explain this is literally rafting. Animals attached themselves, like grabbed onto bits of floating debris, which there probably would have been plenty of after the flood, they say, and they floated to where they needed to go. Of course, I've also heard some creationists say that they were shot to where they needed to go by volcanoes, which is where we get the suborbital platypus idea.
Suborbital platypus.
I feel like that might have a few problems. But yeah, it's a weird thing because Matt just rejects rafting as an idea, but he needs rafting. He absolutely needs it for his ideas to work.
He also looks there in that freeze frame like he was doing a poo. Oh, even more so there.
Across the ocean to a land anew over in South America.
Now, I do want to point out that at the time this would have happened, Africa and South America would have been much closer together. And so the trip would have been about a third as long as it would be now, which is still really long, but it's doable. And again, we see rafting events now.
Yeah.
Today, rafting events happen. It's not a thing that we're like, is this real? Like, no, we watch it happen. It's just as real as the waves on the ocean or baby pigeons, although I've never seen one of those. Although, hey, you ever heard the word squab used in connection with, like, food?
No.
That's, well, if you read some fantasy books, you might come across it. That's literally when you eat a baby pigeon.
Right.
You call it squab.
Okay, then.
Yeah, you eat them right before their first flight, so they're still all nice and tender, but they're plump because they're almost adult size. Then you just grab them and you eat them.
Nom, 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 nom.
Now that has a lot of problems. There's tides out there. You know, they probably get blown off their surf. Who has ever seen a monkey surf? I don't even think they can.
I mean, if you've ever watched like the 9 o'clock news, they'll do little specials about surfing, whatever.
Yeah,
but again,
sure
no one is
surfing
proposing that they were surfing on a surfboard. No one. So all of his claims are like, well, how could they surf when they're just stupid little monkeys and there's tides? Again, that's not what anyone means, man. No one means that.
But, like, this is what happens, folks, when you go into fantasy land and when you think that the world created itself from nothing, magically, I might add.
Yes, because the idea that involves just physics operating as we know physics to operate, that's the magical option. The option where a guy uses conjuration spells to create the world, that's the non-magical option.
Yeah, the actual magic Sky Daddy, that's not magic.
Yeah. The miracles, not magic. Physics, magic. Okay.
I think that was all of it.
Wait, did it just end?
Yeah, that was all you had on there.
Oh, well, there you go.
What happens, folks, when you go into...
Yep, that's it. Well, there you go. There was a couple of Matt Powell videos and one Raw Matt video to show you I was asked to bring like the stupidest young Earth creationists I could, and it is hard to find a creationist stupider than either of the young Earth Matts. So,
Icy Spin $2, rather, says next is turtles fight crime and eat pizza. Calling it. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow actually yet, so we'll see. All right, I had a poll up. Who is dumber, Flerfs or young Earth creationists? And I'll end that now. See if Google can count to 100 today. No, Google cannot count to 100 today. Flerfs 77%, young Earth creationist 22%, 1% unknown.
So I actually voted for Flerfs for the reason I said at the beginning, right? Where all you need to do to prove the Earth isn't flat is know that the sun sets and call someone in a significantly different time zone and see if the sun's up there when it's down for you or vice versa. That's it. If you can do that, you can prove the Earth isn't flat. That's all it takes. Whereas it's harder to do that with evolution and the age of the Earth and the Big Bang and whatnot. So, I do give it, the Flerfs are stupider, but it really is the case that they make the same basic mistakes and the same basic arguments and the same fallacies, the same just absolute inability to understand anything more nuanced than like C-spot run.
You know, I haven't prepared for a Flat Earth debate in about 2.5 years. I literally just turn up and go, right, which one of my arguments am I going to use today? And then just kind of like bring up, I've got like hundreds of lists of websites that link to all the evidence I need. So I'll go, right, I'll just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my presentation will just be these random 5 things I brought up from my list of evidence. I don't need to prepare anymore.
Yeah, they don't change. And that's actually one of the things in young Earth creationism too. I usually say that young Earth creationists are somewhere between 30 and 100 years out of date on any science that they actually accept. That they try to talk about.
Sounds just like Flerfs, and sovereign citizens are out of date with their law. Guys,
I'm not even sure their law was ever in date.
No, they've got their own law, just like Flerfs have got their own physics. Guys, thank you very, very much for watching today. Thank you very much for the incredible amount of support. Please do me a massive favor. Click on the channel in the title of this stream and go and subscribe to my good friend Dapper Dino, or he will take off his human suit and eat you, because he is actually a dinosaur. If you look at the thumbnail, that's his actual form. We did a video together a couple of years ago, episode 1 of Stupid Humans. You can see him there. He's actually a dinosaur. And if you want to see more of him and I together, then it's nothing like that. Just calm down. You can go and watch our Friday stream where we play Star Trek role-playing, and he is the GM and I am just a little noob trying to play my first proper game, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, come on. You're Commander Shelby, the chief engineer of the USS Lexington, NCC 1709.
I am, and I've blown up 2 solar systems.
Yeah, but only 2.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still not sure why Starfleet promoted me an episode after I blew up a solar system, but you know.
They didn't blame you, because they're dumb.
Yeah. I mean, and technically, you know, that solar system is still blowing up.
Yeah, the stars are still there, to be fair. Just the planets are not doing too well.
So come and watch us on Fridays where we nerd out and play Star Trek on Top Hats Off channel. That's awesome. I enjoy that a lot. And yeah, we're going to get Dapper back on at some point and have a chat between him and Peter Markley about Young Earth Creationists. Maybe we can save someone who isn't very smart. Peter actually seems like a very smart guy. I've seen him debate against Flat Earth, and you know, he seems to understand science and stuff. So who knows?
Actually, every once in a while, Toon has a Young Earth Creationist professional on who's written a book about Flat Earth where he says he actually puts out a good case against Flat Earth.
Yeah, Danny.
He just doesn't apply that to the rest of science. Danny or Falk? Is it Danny Faulkner?
Danny Faulkner.
Danny
Yeah.
Faulkner.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him.
Yeah. No, I'm not either. But he did write a book that does pretty effectively defeat the Flat Earth. However, I've also seen Kent Hovind, another prominent Flat Earther, try to defend the globe. And basically all he did was call Flat Earthers morons, which is 1, true, but 2, not evidence of the globe.
No. It is very, very true, though.
Yeah, it's just
Dapper,
doesn't prove the globe.
Thank you very much for coming on today. I very much appreciate it. I know it's a short notice, so I appreciate you taking time to grab those clips and talk us through the stupidity of Young Earth Creationists. And it's good to know that after the final experiment, when Flat Earth is dead, I've still got stupid people to poke at.
Oh yeah, creationism has been around for a long time, and they're seemingly gaining power in the United States. The current Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States has an author page on the Answers in Genesis website, so that's fun.
Yeah. Right, well, thank you very much for coming on, Dapper. I'm going to get out of here and finish the stream up. So, guys, please go and subscribe to Dapper Dino. He deals with creationists and other stuff over there. And please subscribe to Top Hats Off to watch us be absolute nerds. Speak to you later, Dapper. Wait.
Talk to you later.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. On Thursday, we've got Conspiracy Cats coming on for a chat. The Thursday after, we've got Simon Dan coming on for a chat. Monday, I'm doing my 1,000 push-up challenge. And half of the super chats go to SAFA, the Armed Forces charity. And the last day of the month, I will be doing an acoustic set. And I will also be trying to fit in my first ever stream of scam baiting. I'm just trying to sort out exactly how to do that, because that's something I've not ever done before. But guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another fun stream. Not sure what it is yet. Gonna figure it out. I might just stream the rocket launch, even though Toon's doing that as well. We'll see. But thank you everyone for watching. And can we ask the important questions? Like, can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars?
Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Should be wishing for a brain right now, brain right now, brain right now.
Good morning, these words come with a storm warning. Better batten down the hatches, grab some matches and brace yourself for a long day of misery. YouTube has given me the power to reach up into the sky and show you all that we live on the ball. I bring you science that's comprehensible. Your view is indefensible. You're reprehensible. Go on, Mr. Sensible. When I was young, I never thought I would be here to see this. A pile of random nonsense dressed up as bullshit. Your ignorance will be the death of us all, like running head first full speed into a wall. You could always read a book, buy a telescope, set it up and take a photo of the moon, or just be a buffoon. I send you in a balloon up to the stratosphere, page 3.
You're a few fries short of a happy meal. You're dumber than a box of hair. The wheel's spinning but the hamster's dead, and you're as smart as bait. You forgot to pay your brain bill. You're missing a few buttons on the remote control. 24 cents short of a quarter. You're surfing in Nebraska. You're as bright as Alaska in December, and you fell out of your family tree. You don't have all the cornflakes in one box. You got an IQ of 2 and it takes 3 to grunt. The elevator doesn't go all the way up, and there's a vacancy on the top floor. Your antenna doesn't pick up all the channels. You're several nuts short of a
You're Mr.
fruitcake.
Sensible, calm down, don't go too hard. You don't need to have Siberian Flerfs in your backyard. You're a man of science, poise and grace. Mage 2 did everything to wipe the grins off the face. So Nathan, get away from those kids. The world is not flat and it doesn't have a lid. Recognize the differences between the textbook and the Bible and control yourself. Lay off your slander and your lies. You're a bunch of knobs poisoning the well of the youth, spreading lies that you like to claim as knowledge and truth. Stop spreading fresh bullshit like the butter on your bread. Maybe your musical assault will knock some sense into your head. I hope one day you'll hear these lyrics and smile, and you realize you used to be a 40-year-old child. Now it's time to wake up, open your eyes and see, and acknowledge the existence of.
You're a few clowns short of a circus. Your phone is off the hook. Your sewing machine is out of thread. You're all foam and no beer. You don't have all your dogs on one leash. An intellect rivaled only by garden tools. There's no grain in your silo, and your skylight leaks a little. Your belt doesn't go through all the loops. You couldn't pour water out of a boot without instructions on the heel. Your slinky's kinked, and you're proof that evolution can work in reverse. A few feathers short of a whole duck, one fruit loop short of a full bowl.
Airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars. Should be wishing for a brain right now, brain right now, brain right now. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Should be wishing for a brain right now, brain right now, brain right now.
You thought it was over? Well, I'm still standing while you're swinging, flinging feces, talking shit just like the human centipede. You got the mind of a chimp, and I'm here to expedite your shore leave. Cause I'm a seaman, but not the kind I writ up on your mom's gums. I'm the kind that sailed submarines and fired guns. I could float a boat across the ocean with my eyes closed, circumnavigate the globe with a compass and a bag of sausage rolls. Well, all you can do is nibble on your toes. I'll smack you with the hose that you taught a water level, sit and swivel. You nasal gazing muppet, you can stuff it harder than the wallet stuffed by Warren Buffett. And I don't care about your sauces unless you're serving them, and I don't care about your lines unless you're curving them. Now step away from me, you're sucking up my oxygen with the vacuum where your brain should be, you dumb fuck. Thank you everyone for watching, I really do appreciate it. Gonna go to bed because go to the gym in 3 o'clock. Go to the gym in about 4.5 hours. I've got to keep this going. You know, might get some sleep at some point. Who cares about sleep, right? Aren't I some kind of clone? I'm not a clone. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I will see you tomorrow. I hope you're all enjoying my stream every day for a month, because who needs sleep or days off or any of that rubbish, right? I love you all, every single fucking one of you, just not you, Gary. Remember, stupidity's not a right. Fight the flag. 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 Fight the flag.
Hi, my name's Nathan Oakley, and I have been lying to people about the Earth being flat for a lot of years. I did this to hide the fact I have a small penis.
I'm a dumb flat earther, and I don't understand science.
Level.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Level.